flower up, right? And the only way the roots grow out every single day, keep watering and look at yourself first and know if are you watering and are you fertilizing every day.
And welcome back to the latest and greatest episode of the Shaving Points Podcast. My name is Jayton May, joined as always by my co-host Quentin Crisco, and a very special guest tonight to help us break down the NFC East and talk some Eagles. We have Mr. Sam Finkel. How are you guys doing?
I'm doing great. Sam, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to talk some ball with you guys. I really appreciate you having me on.
Yes. And Sam, do you want to tell any of the listeners, any of the viewers, a little bit about yourself, your background, and where they can find your stuff?
Yeah, sure. So my football experience, I started out as a recruiting assistant at Penn State. Ended up being an undergraduate assistant with the quarterbacks. From 2017 to 2020. Then I went to law school and I started writing for Inside the Birds, and I currently do sports law. And I got to give the obligatory lawyer, don't take this as legal advice, even though I don't think anyone was going to derive legal advice from this, but I have to say it anyway. But that's me. You can follow me on Twitter with Sam_Finkel, or check out my articles on Inside the Birds.
Good deal. Well, let's get into some Eagles. And I think a good place to start is just always asking, where do you think the strength of this team lies? Like, what do you think the one area you can count on for this roster is?
You know, I never thought I'd say this, especially after last year, but I think it's the corner room. I think the corners, I feel really good about that area. And part of the reason I feel so good about it is because we're probably going to have to cut somebody who might start on another team, or at least be a top depth option. You know, it just feels like there is a lot of strength in that room, and it is young. I think that's a good point, but I feel very confident about it.
Interesting. So where do you think James Bradbury, like, does he have a spot on this roster? Do you think he's a guy that you're kind of talking about that might end up someplace else?
So my gut instinct is he's probably gone. I know they were talking about potentially moving him to safety, and there were some talks about trying to rework the deal, or who knows, but I think there is a spot if he's willing to go back to the bargaining table. I'm not sure he necessarily has to. I was a big critic of him. I wrote an article that was one of the more negative ones I wrote about how his performance was. But, I mean, everybody has bad seasons, so I still think he has some football to play.
Yeah, I was really conflicted on his tape because it was like the guy's still playing some good ball, right? But then there's moments where it's just like, can't do that, right? It's like he's just a step slow, and that's all it takes. Like when Jay, who's the Cowboys number 3 wide receiver right now?
Jalen Tolbert.
Jalen Tolbert. When Jalen Tolbert,
I was about to say,
you
it
up and
depends
down
on the day.
field all game, that's a problem, right?
Yeah.
Like the speed is not there for him to like catch up. But then there's like these moments where he's making these really nice pass deflections and stuff at the same time. And it's like, makes me want to believe it's still there. But I think once you lose that step, you lose that step.
Well, I think there's
Especially
a
that
natural
corner.
progression. Yeah, for sure. But I think there's a natural progression to that safety spot then that could be utilized. Problem is the safety room is a little questionable too. Like that, where would he necessarily fit? So
yeah. So you're expecting what, Quinyon Mitchell to be starting in Bradbury's spot on the outside?
I would love to see that. Quinyon Mitchell was my CB1 this year, and I was cheering on the draft that we got him. It was an awesome selection. We met him down at the Senior Bowl, and I really enjoyed talking to him. I actually thought he had one of the best performances, at least on that first day that I was down there. Maybe it was the second day, but regardless, I really love what he brings to the table, and I think he could start pretty instantly. And I feel pretty comfortable having him out there.
Yeah, it's man, at the Senior Bowl, he was like a bit of a measuring stick out there for like when a receiver started doing well, a coach would pull him over and be like, try against this guy, see if you can beat this guy. Like, you love to see that in a guy at the Senior Bowl. It's just like he is the standard out there. That's what he was at this year's Senior Bowl, which is really exciting to add on to your team. Now, I'm curious to see how Fangio meshes him into it because he played so much off coverage at Toledo. And thinking back to Kyle Fuller with the Bears, who was much more comfortable in off coverage, Fangio found ways to work that in with Kyle Fuller eventually. But Fuller kind of had to earn it first. Like he had to earn the right to be able to play the way he wanted to play. So do you think there's going to be kind of a learning curve for him? I mean, there's always learning curve for rookie corners, but do you think there's like to any Eagles fans, like how would you temper their expectations early for them to be able to put up with maybe some missteps that I think inevitably might get out there?
For sure. I think there's 2 points. First off, I get what you were saying. Rookies will make mistakes. Like that is a natural thing that you should expect for rookies. They're not perfect. They're rookies for a reason. So I think for right off the bat, that's something that should be said. Another thing that we were talking about a little bit before this, but Fangio's defense is one of the trickiest defenses out there. It's a tough, there's a lot of rules to it. And it does rely heavily on the corners, especially because it should be a base nickel defense. So there's going to be another corner out there. So that leads to more opportunities, but it also leads to more reliance on the position. And for someone who hasn't played at that game speed, he also played at Toledo. So like there's going to be a huge adjustment and you got to expect it. But I do think he has the tools to figure it all out. So I just think they need to be a little patient with him, but I do think it is going to be something that is worth seeing out.
Now, I know the guy who you're saying they were going to run like a base nickel defense. I know the guy who they're going to be playing in nickel, Cooper DeJean, Jay loved coming into this draft.
Eagles take all the players I love in a draft.
Well, I had him as CB3 too. I really liked DeJean.
I just love the idea of like Cooper DeJean Cowboys jerseys would have flown off the shelves.
You hear that, Eagles fans? That's a challenge. We got to start buying some DeJean jerseys.
Yeah, got to, man. I mean, it would have and if he was bad, they probably would have sold more just for the bit. We were talking about like franchises that like would just where you would see DeJean jerseys for like the rest of your life. It was like Cowboys, Patriots, like Steelers, like just those old school franchises. Just with the white corner out there is just like, oh yeah,
no, for sure. And I think
we'll see DeJean jerseys for a long time to come in Philly.
Fingers crossed. I love having him there, especially with Blankenship. Like it's kind of a cool, combination. You don't really see that often.
Yeah.
But I don't know if he's going to play nickel right away. I do think he'll get snaps, but I think there's a lot of competition there. I mean, we re-signed Avonte Maddox, who I still think has a lot of game in it, but there's a reason why he was cut earlier.
The Eagles re-sign everybody.
Yeah, we do that. Howie Roseman, you figure this all out.
Meanwhile, but we can't even keep star players.
No doubt. I don't understand it at all. You guys have a lot of talent. It's hard for you to retain it. And
just wait till the last second. Then when we do pay early, they're terrible. Paid Jalen Smith early, just fell off a cliff. Zeke got paid early, which is what it is. I mean, running backs are but what they are. But it seems like every time we pay a guy early, who's the?
I mean, the Eagles paid Carson Wentz early.
That is true. We did.
Yeah.
That was a regret.
But then Howie just did his wizard magic and it was gone.
Yeah,
exactly. But the thing is, like, I do think the Cowboys are probably one. Once Jerry Jones is gone and there's Stephen Jones, they're going to be in trouble again. I'm a little concerned about that. Jerry's kind of our saving grace right now.
Yeah, I mean, they draft well. They just don't manage their cap situation very well. It's like if they could just retain in-house talent, like it would be a completely different story.
Sure.
But yeah,
looking back at the safety room here,
sure.
I mean, so Reed Blankenship was kind of a guy who came up out of nowhere and almost feels like a stabilizing force back there. What do you think of him and his play that you've seen?
Yeah, I love his physicality. He's not a superstar, and we don't need him to be. But he plays hard. He's smart. He does a really good job at getting to the football at the right time. And he's going to be a very useful player for the Eagles, and definitely someone that I do think they're going to rotate a little bit at safety, but I do think he'll probably get most of those snaps at that position. I know return of CJ is huge, but you can put him anywhere too.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
in one of the things in Chicago that Fangio did such a good job with was getting his safeties into late rotations. And a big part of that was Eddie Jackson's ability as a late rotating safety. Is there any safety in this room that you feel like has the skill set, the feel in space to be good with that? Or is there kind of is going to be a mix of guys going around?
I'm hesitant to say that there is a guy right now to do that. I think CJ has all the ability to do that, but I still think because he's like so versatile, there's some kind of like he has to learn a little bit of everything. And so I think he could become that, and I think he should become that. But I think that I can't really outright say that right now. And a guy like Sidney Brown would be cool too, but he's also, I think, learning. And luckily, because of the transition from Desai to Fangio, it's not that huge of a transition. But I'm sure that there's some Fangio wrinkles that are going to have to be learned and will be a little difficult for that transition, especially with the late rotation or anything kind of like that. But it is a staple, you're right. And I do think that'll be used. I don't know it would be to Eddie Jackson's level right now.
And then one last question I got on the DB room. Like, we got Darius Slay here. I think Darius Slay is still fine. Like, I've been on record, and I still will stay on record. I think Slay has always been a tad overrated because he has an incredible nickname. But he's a good football player. I just thought James Bradbury was the better cornerback for the last few years until this past year. Now, behind him, we've already talked a little bit about the rookies. What's going to happen with Kelly Ringo? Kelly Ringo?
Kelly.
Yeah. So I think it's tough because there's also Ricks and there's Josh Jobe. There's so many. There's going to be a casualty of at least maybe two of those guys, if not all three, if not one. But so I don't know. I think it really is going to depend on how they show out at camp and who can really get a feel for what Fangio is looking for.
I think if Kelly Ringo went to like Mississippi State or like Kentucky, his name wouldn't carry nearly the weight it does. I feel like he gets more benefits from being a Georgia Bulldog than just about any Georgia Bulldog. I didn't really like him in the draft. I know a lot of people like he was very kind of polarizing coming in.
Sure. Yeah.
And then
I was kind of like in the third round.
Yeah, was it third round? I couldn't remember where he went.
I think so too.
But he was getting projected anywhere from late first to fifth round. So like nobody really knew. I felt like late third, early fourth was kind of where he would end up anyway. But yeah, I mean, I think he got the most benefit from being a Georgia Bulldog.
Oh, you mean the Philadelphia Bulldogs?
Yeah, close enough. Yeah.
Yeah, right. I do think that is a thing too, but I mean, there's a reason why he was considered as a top prospect at one point. People projected him to be there.
Oh yeah,
and I think he still has that ability in him, and I think it just takes a little bit more development. And the thing is, are the Eagles going to put that in? Are they going to be able to? Like, of course they'd want to, but are they going to have the luxury of that?
Also seems like a guy that might need reps, and it's like, where are you going to get the reps in this DB room?
Exactly. I think that's a really good point.
Yeah, I understand why you say this is the big strength. I didn't see it that way coming into this, so I was a little surprised. But looking through it again and thinking through, like, there's just a lot of talent and opportunity in this room at the same time, which I understand where you're coming from. Of the competition brings out the brightest, right?
Yeah, I honestly was thinking about it, and there are a lot of strengths to this team, but this is a room that I feel really comfortable even just rotating the guys, that you're going to get some good performance out of them every time.
Can't be any worse than last year.
Exactly. And the Eagles have historically not really had a great cornerback room, so I really wanted to, shine a light on that this year because I feel very optimistic about this room.
All right. Well, moving it over to another Georgia Bulldog, Nakobe Dean in the linebacker room, adding Devin White as well, and picking up, the legacy pick, Jeremiah Trotter Jr. What do you think of this linebacker room, and how much do you think it's going to matter in the grand scheme of this defense, what this room is able to add?
So I think foundationally, linebacker is a position that the league doesn't necessarily value, but I know for a fact the Eagles don't necessarily value, which could be a mistake because it is the weakest position, I think, of the entire Eagles roster. But if you think about it, we only have 2 linebackers out there at a time. At least we did last year, and I anticipate it'll be similar this year, just because it's still a Fangio system. But I do think the additions are interesting. I don't feel super confident about them. I think it's still a very weak spot. I can tell you why on each player why there's a problem. I think we can start with Nakobe Dean. He can't stay on the field, and I'm super hesitant to call a player injury prone because it's kind of less of a thing. I'd say.
Would he be considered injury prone or injury riddled? Because he basically just had one major injury, but it's like, can he recover from that? Because it's not like it's like a hamstring one week, an ankle the next week, a shoulder after that.
That's a good point. Yeah, I think injury riddle would be a more appropriate term, and I agree. And they always say like the best ability is availability. Well, I don't always 100% agree with that. It is an important point, and I think he's kind of on his last legs. Like you got to prove it, right? So like, can you stay on the field? So I think this is a big year for him, and because of that, I'm hoping that he'll be motivated to like really rehab and to prioritize. Not that he wouldn't be already, but I'd like to see what he's capable of actually, because we really haven't seen what he can do, and what we have seen hasn't been that necessarily that impressive.
Yeah, I think we only saw one full season of him at Georgia, because he's had that back lingering for I think his last 2 full years at Georgia. So I mean, that's one of those things. Kind of like you see some other linebackers like Leighton Vander Esch. Whenever he got hurt, it was just came back. He was fine, but it just takes him early.
Yeah, it's a shame. And I think Vander Esch was an awesome player too. So like, it's a shame that this position is just a very violent position, and that's part of the reason why there's less value, because you have to replace them so frequently.
Now,
Bears love them some linebackers.
Devin White is a violent man.
Oh, I was hoping we got to him next.
Yeah, I'm not sure he knows what he's doing some of the times, but whatever he's doing it with very violent intentions.
100%.
Was Devin White, was he the Steeler or the Buccaneer? I can't keep up with my Devons.
He was a Buccaneer.
Okay. Much better than the Steeler Devin. Which
Bush.
one is that? Devin Bush. They're in the same draft, and then just always threw me off.
Me too. I had to think about it when I switched to this slide. I had to think about it.
So Devin White played for LSU, and he was like an early to mid first round pick, I believe. Devin Bush was later, I want to say, in the first round.
I think Devin Bush went 10.
Oh, yeah. Wow,
like
that's
that.
crazy.
He was
That's
from
crazy.
Michigan, I believe.
Yeah, he was from Michigan.
Yeah. Going to the same. I just always noticed the Buccaneer Devin and the Steeler Devin.
That's cool. They probably never shook that comparison either. That's kind of interesting.
The main takeaway I've ever had from watching Devin White play football is that he is just decapitating people.
Which, by the way, Philly fans love that, especially when there's a star on the helmet. They're particularly
also
love that.
Playing alongside Levante David for as long as he did can never hurt anybody.
Sure,
it gave him a lot. I felt like in Tampa he was almost used as like an agent of chaos a lot of the times, where it wasn't like he.
Well, when you have a Levante David on your team, you can
and
just kind of let another guy run loose.
Yeah, sure, exactly. But precisely, I feel like that was kind of his role.
Levante might be the most criminally underrated player in the league.
I totally agree. I think that's a really good point. Yeah,
but let's get back over to some more Georgia Bulldogs, where we got Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, and Nolan Smith along the defensive line, and a bunch of other names. Those are just the Georgia Bulldog aspects of it. What are your macro views of this defensive line?
So I think first off, the hardest thing will be replacing Fletcher Cox. And I don't think the Eagles are going to necessarily be able to do that. And I think the only way you're going to be able to do that is try to replace his production in the aggregate. And so you're going to have to just have a bunch of guys coming in and try to fill that role. And I I think losing Fletcher Cox is a huge deal for the Eagles. Like I think it is especially for that defensive line. The continuity aside, I think the production is going to suffer a little bit this year.
I mean, I can see that. We were talking a little bit pre-show. I was in watching tape and prep for this. I somehow got the idea in my head that Jordan Davis wore number 91 at one point. You watch enough tape, you can start to believe just about anything. So he was getting to like robot mode a little bit. And I'm sitting here going like shaken out of it. Like Jordan Davis is making plays left and right. Like when did this start? And then I go look at the Eagles roster, go 91 is Fletcher Cox. Fletcher Cox is making plays left and right. Like this guy was like 34 years old and he was still everywhere. And now
Never stops.
Yeah, I'm shocked that he retired with how well he was playing.
He's still a lot of football left if he wanted it.
Yeah. But so is Jalen Carter going to be able to answer the bell, you think? Do you think he's going to get a step closer to reaching his potential? I loved Carter in that draft, and I think the world of his talent. But
I still love Jalen Carter. Yeah, I think he is the closest on the defensive line to reach that potential for sure. I'm the most optimistic about him. And I think he showed this season like why he could be that kind of player. Not necessarily as frequently as you would have liked, but I also think you kind of do get overshadowed by having someone like Fletcher Cox. And I'm hoping through like osmosis, he could absorb some of that knowledge and can wreak havoc the same way Fletch did.
So his decline in production later in the season, I know he was like battling some injuries. You don't. I mean, it's a rookie, so rookies can come out hot, and then the league kind of catch up with them pretty quick. Especially you're not used to the wear and tear, especially like from Sunday night games to Thursday night games, and then just constant going. So do you think that had more to do with it, or do you have any worries at all as him as a professional, I guess is probably the best way to put it. I mean, nobody's holding you accountable. You're kind of on your own. Because, I mean, I think that was like the biggest kind of red flag on him going into the draft, and where a defensive lineman went number 1 overall. And, I mean, that was kind of his red flag that let him fall as far as he did.
Sure. And you know what? You do hope that, and really the only way you're going to know is if you watch. And personally, and I'm trying to be as unbiased as I can, I do think.
Oh, we're nothing but unbiased on this show. Yes,
of course. I could tell. But I think that he's a rookie, and I think I definitely would like to attribute that to wear and tear and just trying to understand the game. And I do think we'll see, or at least I hope we'll see sustained success this season.
I'll say I disagree. I think he just don't got it. Some people got it, some people don't. And I just don't think he got it.
Well,
but
I think
I've been wrong plenty of times before.
I'm more concerned about Jordan Davis not having it. That's where
I would say that's almost close to accepted reality at this point, and it's just on him, because like when that dude wants to play ball, my God, that dude plays ball.
Sure. And he looked pretty good for the last pictures that they were coming out with him.
Yeah.
It looks like he's lost some weight and, really
everybody's a Hall of Famer in training camp.
Of course, yes. And we were talking about that before too.
So back to the one thing I want to say about Jalen Carter. I think some of the drop off in the second half is a little bit over discussed, because you're talking about a rookie who went from being a top 5 defensive tackle in the NFL to a top 25 defensive tackle in the NFL. A rookie who stays top 25 defensive tackle in the NFL for an entire season is praised, right?
100%.
So it's not like the second half of the season he was becoming a guy who you couldn't start. He just was no longer that top 5 player in the NFL.
Well, I think you can attribute that to a lot of different things too. Like that second half of this year was so terrible for pretty much the entire Eagles team. I mean, there was all this stuff coming out about, problems in the locker room. They switched from Desai to Patricia. The defense was horrible altogether, but the offense couldn't stay on the field either. So you were just getting a lot more volume. And, I think that there's a lot of things that can defend that. And I think because of how dramatic a shift it was from 5 to 25, that is part of the reason it's highlighted. But I really, honestly, I wish they would just put that rest of that season to bed, like bury it. It happened, it happened, and they should be held accountable, but I wouldn't necessarily use that to project how they do this year.
Yeah. And then tell me a little bit about Milton Williams, because I didn't watch tape back when he was drafted. I just oohed and ahed at the shiny numbers from the combine, and I was like, I want that. It's a contract year for him, big spot for him with snaps to fill with Fletcher Cox gone. What is there to expect from Milton Williams this year?
So this is kind of what I was hoping to talk about with him and kind of Jordan Davis together, right? So I think that those guys together might be able to create some of the production that you would get from losing Fletcher Cox. So Fletcher Cox was good at every single facet of defensive line. We know that Jordan Davis is limited in some ways, right? There obviously has a lot of the intangibles, but I think Milton Williams has a lot of intangibles too. And I think the two of them are complementary to each other, right? So what Jordan Davis is really good at, Milton Williams is not as good at, but I think that what Milton Williams does really well, Jordan Davis struggles at. So I think having those two guys being able to play off of each other, you're never going to get that output of Fletcher Cox, but it's going to be as close as the Eagles can create this year. And so that's the thing I'm really excited about, is because I think Milton Williams really does a good job complementing what Jordan Davis does, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And has Moro Ojomo put some meat on his bones?
I hope so. I want to see a little bit more of him, hopefully. I think there's going to be a big rotation, so I think he'd be an important and cool name to see.
That dude flew around at Texas, man. He was fun to watch. Now, in the edge rusher room, Hassan Reddick gone. Bryce Huff comes in. Very exciting player, very unproven player, but unproven's probably inexperience. Inexperience is the better word, because whenever he's been on the field, he wreaks havoc, but it's just like he never got on the field enough to almost know the risks of his play. Like, it's almost like he's a shiny toy that you see through the window, but you can't tell that there might be something wrong with it on the other side. I'm not quite sure. I like Bryce Huff a lot. I want him to be a Chicago Bear, but I was also nervous about it the whole time I was hoping for it.
Sure. And you're putting up a lot for that prospect, right? So it's kind of tough. First off, shout out to Hassan Reddick, fellow Temple guy. I love that. Very thankful for what he did for the city. He definitely always played his heart out, even hurt.
Where did he end up?
He ended up. Where
Jets.
did he? Yeah. Because it was basically a swap, essentially, at the end of the day.
Did he have to change colors?
Yes. But did have to go to Jersey, which is
just play with Quentin Williams.
Yeah, but Jersey,
Philly. It's basically the same place.
Well, I don't know about that. I don't think our any of your Philly listeners would love to hear that.
That border, 1 mile south of me, that is a different place.
Growing up in Texas, where it's like 45 miles to get anywhere. When I'm up in Philly, and I'm like, oh, Jersey's just right there. I'm like, it's basically the same town. People call DFW like Dallas and Fort Worth. There's a good 20 miles between them.
For sure, but there's definitely some Philly Jersey rivalry, and I say that lovingly because I'm going to spend my weekend in the Jersey Shore, so you can take
it's a good time up there, but yeah, it's just crazy how how close everything is up in the Northeast, and then you hear about because I never spent much time up there until probably about 5 years ago. Everything's so much different, like the Baltimores to the Phillies and New York, New Jersey. They all just seem like, you just think of distance in Texas. You're like, man, they must be pretty far away. Then you get up there, you're like, oh, I can go all of these in a day. To where I have people in Philly from Philadelphia or Northeast come down here and like, oh yeah, let's go see the Alamo in San Antonio, then drive down to Houston, and then like we'll go to Dallas. I'm like, that's a 3-day trip, brother.
It's harder to visualize for us. I mean, we're so used to being able to go everywhere. So for sure,
It's just funny, but yeah, I just had to throw that in there and get
of course.
But
the rowdy fans going.
what type of snaps do you expect from this edge room for these different players?
Yeah. Well, first off, look, can I go back to Bryce Huff for 1 second?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I just want to say I think the volume concerns are legit because we don't know, right? But I think that role is made for him. Like I think he slots in perfectly, and I think the defense will really shine because it's a pretty solid defense all around. And if he can produce even close to what he was doing last season, maybe even half that production over a greater volume, I think he could be a star for the team. And I think he has the athleticism to do it. And I'm excited to see what he can do.
And because you mentioned the role, like what's the role that you're talking about? Like what is that exactly?
Sure. I kind of see him slotting into that Hassan Reddick role, right? Of just, coming off the edge and being able to sometimes coverage, but really not. It's really just that
featured pass rusher role.
Exactly.
For the most part. Like I think of it from the Bears standpoint, it's not the Leonard Floyd role, it's the Khalil Mack role.
Exactly. And I'm not going to say he's Khalil Mack because
no. But the role of like, why would you not have this guy rushing the passer? Because
exactly.
Anyone unfamiliar, like Vic Fangio is going to spend a lot of time with 3 down linemen and a edge rusher linebacker flanked on each side, and you don't know which one's coming.
Right.
So, like, more often than not, it's going to be the featured pass rusher.
Was that Lance Briggs?
No, Lance Briggs was a real linebacker, Frank. You don't want to open up that can of like my anger at Pro Bowl voting for not voting Lance Briggs in because Sean Merriman had 20 sacks.
I'm kind of here for it. I'm here for it. Let's
stir the pot, boys.
We gotta
stir the pot.
One thing that I'm interested in with this edge room, really, really interested to see, is can Nolan Smith add weight? Because when he was a high school recruit, from the time when he was recruited out of high school until he was drafted, I want to say he only gained like 8 pounds.
That's crazy.
And it was his 24/7 profile was barely heavier than his draft profile, which was insane. And I was like, I watched this guy's tape and I did see shades of Khalil Mack in the way that he played football. But I was like, can he add the weight? That was my main question with him. And if he can add the weight, I think he's tailor-made for a Vic Fangio defense. But that's just still my big question.
The other thing is you also have to build the weight correctly, right? Because you don't want to lose any of that explosiveness. Or
no, he's definitely had bad weight.
Yeah. I mean, Jordan Davis, unfortunately, that was kind of what happened last year. Not to be too speculative, but that's kind of what all the reports were saying. So yes, he has to build that weight, but he has to do it properly. And I'm hoping the Eagles strength and conditioning staff, has a good plan for him and we can see that come to fruition. Because I do think you're right. I think he is perfect for that Fangio system, and I'd love to see it. But again, I do think I don't necessarily put as much, I don't think it necessarily has to be that as much weight, but I think it would improve his game significantly. It would raise his ceiling for sure. But I don't think it's contingent on his success in the defense, I'd say, if that makes sense.
And I'm just thinking about it from the standpoint of like, he is such an animal against the run and so good with his hands. But it doesn't matter when you're 230 pounds. It just won't matter. He can't play Sam backer. He can't be on the strong side of the formation trying to take on a tight end or even a tackle at times in the run game because he's just too light, which means he has to be on the weak side, which makes him your designated pass rusher. But that's what Bryce Huff is here to do. So like that, to me, that being able to add that effective mass, that good mass is such a key for him to see the field. Because if not, I mean, I feel like receive more Brandon Graham, and I'm not even sure how you divvy up these snaps between Josh Sweat and Bryce Huff as a designated pass rusher, as the weak side guy.
And now they got Jalix Hunt too, and
Yeah.
Vaughn, and there's a bunch of guys. Yeah, and I'm excited. He's very raw though, so I don't think he's going to get that many snaps. But here's hoping that one day
he'll be a Hall of Famer.
I mean, he has a Hall of Fame name already, right? Like that's kind of big part of it.
Jalix Hunt.
But no, I think the one thing I love about this defense is I think there's a lot of versatility at almost every position. But with that, there becomes a point where you're too role indefinite, right? That you don't have guys in defined roles, and it makes it hard when everybody has to like cover different positions.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a
hard
strength,
to get good
right?
at something you only practice half the practice in.
Exactly.
Or like a third of the practice in.
One good thing is that one of the quarterbacks in the division is a rookie, and I mean, Washington's not the easiest team. I mean, they got a lot of talent there, but yeah, I mean, you can basically put the stamp of guarantee on it that Vic Fangio is just going to make his life an absolute hell. So it's never easy to win. Never easy to win it. Never easy to win in the division, but you can almost pencil that one in already just because of that alone.
Hey, knock on wood. From your hopefully it's right.
I feel like the Eagles' history with the Commanders has been iffy the last few years, of like a lot of near heartbreak and like how like that kind of feeling.
It's gonna be a tough team this year. They're gonna be a real tough team.
I think so too.
All right.
Go ahead.
You just want to? Can I just go over this offense in a whole real quick? If you just want to go back to the main page before y'all get started, because I got some takes here. All right, so you got Devonta Smith, you got AJ Brown, you got Dallas Goedert, one of the best receiving trios in the league. You still have Jordan Mailata, you still have Lane Johnson on your bookends, Lane Dickerson at guard, Cam Jurgens, which I think is going to be a very serviceable center here. Jalen Hurts, you go out and sign Saquon Barkley. How terrified are you that this is going to be the weakness of your offense with Kellen Moore calling plays, because that dude makes everything overcomplicated? I have a very, very strong feeling that this team's going to be heavily carried by this defense, and this offense is going to struggle really bad under this Kellen Moore offense. I don't think he fits Jalen Hurts at all in the slightest, and bringing in a brand new running back, like, tell me I'm wrong, but it's like you look at this offense and you love everything about it. Then you look at the guy scheming up plays, and he's an offensive genius that can't really put on to the field of what he actually wants to do. He overcomplicates everything, kind of puts his own mind in a pretzel at times. Like if you go back and look at some of his time with Dallas, or even some of his time with the Chargers, there's times where receivers are running into each other on route combinations because he's seeing something different than that's actually on the field, to where receivers are seeing cover 2, he's projecting a cover 1 and stuff like that. So how terrified are you as an Eagles fan that you look at this offense that should be the best offense in the league, and it's gonna be brutal?
Well, I'll tell you this. I'll start here. It can't be worse than last year, because
it can't be worse than last year. But if I'm an Eagles fan, I'm terrified, because it's like, how much longer can you keep this core together? And then you go out and spend big money on a running back, kind of, I would say, outside of linebacker, probably the most replaceable position in football. You let DeAndre Swift go, who I'm very high on DeAndre Swift, but Saquon's a guy that we've seen flashes, and he was on a really bad team. So it's like, how much does he get elevated with a good offensive line, with some receiving threats, and a guy like Jalen Hurts next to him? But what does that take away from the proven guys on the team, if at all? Like it's reminding me of, what was it, the 07 Dream Team, where it's just, you got all this talent, and I'm optimistic in this, but also trying to be like objective, and like, something about it's telling me it's not going to work.
So I can understand, especially after what we saw last year, why you say that. But I have so many points to what you said that I'm ready to
you
go
go
for
off,
sure.
King. I mean,
So
I'm definitely a hater, but I try to be objective when we're talking on the
for
pod. Like,
sure.
I mean, if you just ask me just in a casual conversation, I'm gonna say they're trash. But in all honesty, it's like it should be the best offense in football, and I'm thinking they're gonna really let y'all down.
Let's start top down. Ready? We'll start
All
this
right,
thing
yeah.
top down. Let's start with Kellen Moore first off. Actually, let's back it up. Let's talk about what happened last year. Let's really embrace this. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Philly fans, why we
Let's
have to
get
go
into
through
it.
this again. I don't think it's Brian Johnson's fault. I really still think he is a good coach. I just don't think it was his time. I think having 2 rookie coordinators was a mistake. And I think the difference between Brian Johnson and Shane Steichen was Shane Steichen told Sirianni no. I think Sirianni had way too much control, and Brian Johnson was just a yes man.
Does that worry you about your head coach? Because
it very much does.
I feel like Philadelphia wants to like Nick Sirianni, but I feel like they've hated him the entire time he's been there, except for the Super Bowl run.
Yeah, I mean, they hated him from his first press conference. Right?
That's what I'm saying. Like,
yeah, but that's Philly.
That's also. It's like, is it Nick Sirianni or is it Philly?
It's a little bit. Listen, I thought it was fireable how bad last season was, and because I think it goes down to your highest guy, right? Like
Andy Reid might be the greatest coach of all time.
I know, and
he was in Philly for a long time and didn't get it done. So I mean,
but we wouldn't have had a Super Bowl without firing him. As much as it pains me to say that, listen,
most likely,
most likely, yeah, you're right. Because he
might have more if you would have kept him.
Who knows? But I'm just I'm happy we got one. But I'm not complacent, but I'm happy we got one. But so I am very concerned about Sirianni. I think there's a short leash on him this year, and I think bringing in Kellen Moore could potentially be an audition if Sirianni doesn't do well. Like I wouldn't be. That. I really like Kellen Moore. I know you're not a huge
everybody loves Kellen Moore until he's in the building. I mean, I'm telling you, there's going to be 5 games this year where you're like, this man is the smartest man in the world. And then you're going to be
smart for his own good. Is that what you're?
Yes, you're gonna be playing. Let's say the Giants are like 1-9. I don't know when y'all play the Giants. When do they play the Giants, Q? You got their schedule right there?
I don't have it pulled up yet.
Oh, okay. Well, let's say they play the Giants like week 11, and the Giants have 1 win, and they're gonna
week 7 we play them.
Okay, yeah. So let's say you're playing a 2-5 or a 2-4 Giants team, and very first drive is a 3-and-out. He just something happens in his brain to where he'll like you'll score 55 the week before. You'll go 3-and-out to open up the Giants game and score 5 points. Like it's
like quicksand.
It's infuriating. Like if one thing goes wrong, this dude just kind of turtles into a shell, and like you'll see wide receiver screen, halfback draw. Follow, then it's like, oh, that didn't work. Let's just try to throw it deep against like a 4 shell coverage. Like
how much of his game plan, or like if he has a script that's longer than a lot of other teams' scripts, where if something doesn't work the way that he needs it to in that script, not that every play needs to work perfectly, but he has ones that he probably needs more than others, it can throw off a lot. And he's constantly trying to get back to that point the rest of the game. That's what it sounds like to me when Jay's describing.
Makes sense. No, that's
when he's on though, it's like, oh my god, this man is a legend. He's a god out here. Like, and then the next week you're just
Super rush, boy.
What is going on? Yeah, it's crazy. You'll feel the ups and downs. I'm just giving you a forewarning just ahead of time that
I think I did
brace yourself.
Do some like stats on him versus the league average in scoring, right? And
yeah,
he outperformed the league scoring 3 out of the last 5 years, and last year was one of the years he didn't. and there was a lot of injuries, and I think you can kind of attribute that to. And the
Justin
other year,
Herbert's trash.
We will not stand for East and stick issues on this podcast.
I'm glad to know where we stand on that. It's a really important issue. But then the other year, he was almost exactly even with league average. So he's doing something right in the aggregate. And I
In
think,
the aggregate, yes.
And I
his,
think
his highs are so high and his lows are so low. There's never just like, let's just go out and score 24 points, play good defense, and win the game.
But I think having the good defense will at least hopefully instill some confidence to him.
Philly's a good team. I'm not sitting here saying like they're going to be sitting at 3-8 or nothing, but it's just there's gonna be some must-win games midway through the season. You're going to be in a tough division race, whether it's with the Cowboys or the Commanders. I'm really high on the Commanders, but you're going to drop some games where you're just like, why can we not score? It's like we have Devonta Smith, we have AJ Brown, we have Dallas Goedert, we have Saquon Barkley, we have Jalen Hurts. Like, why can we not score?
It makes sense, and that would be a valid concern. Listen, there's a short list of things that I just need him to do, and it'll be okay.
Yeah,
I just need him to pick up a blitz. I need him to be able to have a little bit of motion involved and some window dressing to these plays so he can have some easier reads for Hurts. And I just need him to not throw screens.
When he runs pre-snap motion, the offense is like a swan in water. And then the next week you'll have like 4 pre-snap motions the entire game.
But as long as he does it, because we didn't have any of those things last year, and it showed why it was a problem. I wrote an article about the Tampa game where I was saying if they blitz us, we are going to lose this game in the playoffs, and that's exactly what happened.
Well, that was just Baker legend.
Baker legend for sure. But
now I do want to get back to a little bit about what you were saying about not blaming Brian Johnson as much as Sirianni. Like, can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, I think a lot of the blame really just falls on Sirianni, and I think it's a kind of a more nuanced take because I don't think a lot of even Eagles fans feel this way because everyone was just like, we got to fire him. I think some of the play calling was limited to what Sirianni wanted. I think Sirianni limited the menu significantly and what was actually callable. And I think Brian Johnson was just trying to do the best with limited material. And because he didn't stand, and I do think not standing up for your offense is problematic, especially at the NFL level. But I think Sirianni had way too much control and too many hands in that offensive pot. So that's where I don't necessarily blame Brian Johnson because I think anybody in his position without having the ability to expand on it would have done pretty much similarly to what he did.
Now
that's the point.
Do you think some of that from Sirianni was essentially based in and tell me if I'm wrong about this with Steichen, but was based in the idea that Shane Steichen ran an offense that was a pretty limited menu out of a ton of different looks and alignments and personnel groupings? Whereas do you think Brian Johnson was trying to get a much bigger menu out there? And do you think that's something that Kellen Moore, do you expect Kellen Moore to decrease his menu, or do you expect Sirianni to allow a bigger menu, basically?
I think this is Kellen Moore's show. I think Sirianni will be able to veto things if he doesn't like them, but it's just a very different dynamic. I think Kellen Moore will be in charge of all the offense. Sirianni will have input. Instead of veto, input. That's a better way to put it.
Knowing my luck as a Cowboys fan, Kellen Moore is just gonna average like 50 points a game this year. So yeah, at least you have that going for you.
Well, yeah,
at least you have that going for
9
you.
games of 100 points and 8 games of 0.
The high highs and the low lows.
Yeah,
no doubt.
Let's get a little bit to Jalen Hurts because
I was hoping.
To me, I mean, I hear all this with Kellen Moore, and it's his show. Kellen Moore is a genius, right? I don't think that's actually debatable. I think Kellen Moore is very good at drawing up plays, at designs, at concepts against certain looks.
I think football IQ, he's up there with just about anybody. He just he just kind of gets in his own head
Situational
sometimes.
feel and composure, I feel like, are the things that become more questionable for him.
And
Yeah.
that's what Sirianni's good at. So that's why I'm hoping
Yeah.
there's some synergy there. I want to see the best of the book, and it's not always going to be that way. But I think that there's a perfect synergy situation or opportunity.
So is
But
Jalen
so-
Hurts? Is Jalen Hurts the guy?
Yes, unequivocally.
Unequivocally.
Yeah,
I mean,
So
Carson
my-
Wentz basically won the MVP.
I know. Listen, Hurts was hurt last year for most of the year. I think he did not play at two. I think there's going to be a regression to the mean this year. I think that what we saw was a much lower than average performance of Hurts. I think Hurts is going to. I'm not saying it's going to be as high as the 22 campaign, but what I'm saying is if you utilize his strength. Listen, I will say this: Hurts is not a top 5 quarterback, and that's okay. You don't need to be a top 5 quarterback to win, but he has strengths that make him unique and that are very hard to stop. You know, I was gonna say
he's not top 5, and you can drop quite a bit lower than that too. But I mean, he's a fine quarterback. I mean, I kind of put him in that same like Dak Prescott area of like anywhere between like 9 and 13.
Perfect. Exactly. I think he's in the top third of the league.
Absolutely.
That and to be honest with you, that's a range of for franchise guys where you can win the whole thing, especially if you mitigate the weaknesses and emphasize the strengths.
Kind of, you got to take Patrick Mahomes out of that equation, and then
For sure
it opens up the whole league. But but between the Brady era and the Mahomes era, it's like, can you really win with a top 13 guy?
I know, and the thing is,
we've
Mahomes,
just been on a crazy
The year
run
they
of
get hurt.
dominant QBs. Yeah.
for sure, Mahomes is probably the most generational talent. Because I coach quarterbacks, and I can just tell you, there's just no one like him.
Yeah,
And
we both went to
witnessing.
Texas Tech, brother. We love us.
You were on the train way before.
Yeah.
But we're witnessing greatness, and we got to appreciate it. And it hurt losing the Super Bowl to him, but like there's greatness.
One of my favorite
Yeah.
Super Bowls ever.
But so with Hurts, my question is, we've seen him be on essentially a limited menu conceptually all his career at this point.
Sure.
And now you're throwing it up to Kellen Moore, who I can only assume has a 500-page playbook.
Probably.
How do you mitigate that? How do you problem solve with that?
Well, I think a lot of what Kellen Moore is probably doing in this time is talking to Hurts and seeing what he likes and what works well for him and watching the film. So I think Hurts is going to have some input into what is going to be obviously in that menu of plays and what is actually in the final playbook. And so I think Kellen Moore is really smart, and he's going to watch the film. He's going to see what Hurts is good at. And I think he's going to use a lot of those plays, but I think he's also going to say, like, he's going to see Hurts' comfort level with the concepts he has, right? So there's some things that he might see on film that Hurts is just not comfortable with. So I don't know if those plays will necessarily make it at the end. So I think it's working on that relationship and seeing what works best for the offense, for Hurts, and for Moore's designs. So I think that's the process that's ongoing right now.
Well, I mean, when you've got Saquon Barkley, Devonta Smith, AJ Brown, Dallas Goedert, a lot of stuff's going to work.
For sure.
Like, these weapons are filthy. And like Jay was talking a little bit about Saquon earlier. I do not know that watching the Giants offensive line from last year. It is up there with the worst offensive lines I've ever watched in my life.
Pretty much Saquon's
That's how
entire
bad
career.
it was. Like, no, I mean, last year was a special kind of bad.
Yeah.
Like, last year was
Did y'all-
like a
Are y'all watching the
2010 Bears
mid-season
level
Hard Knocks
bad.
right now?
I've watched the clips of it. I
saw the clip earlier where the Giants GM called Saquon. And he was like, "So what are you thinking?" He was like, "Well, I don't know." And he's like, "Well, we're gonna let you explore free agency. We're not gonna tag you or nothing." He was like, "Can you promise you'll give us a chance if you go somewhere else?" He was like, I've already let you know where I stand there. And then the next clip, they're like, "Oh, Saquon's in Philly. This is a nightmare."
Well, here, the thing that's funny about that is I know Saquon from when I was at Penn State.
Yeah.
And that is like the most assertive I've ever heard him ever. He's the most like mild-mannered, chill, down to earth
But
person.
can you imagine being that
wasn't happy, I
talented?
guess.
I know
Well,
that is his assertive level.
Being that talented, and they're like, we're gonna franchise you, and we're gonna extend a very questionable quarterback that, like, whether or not, like, we don't even know if this guy can start in the league, much less garner an extension. I know it was kind of one of those like fake extensions, but it's like you still paid him. And being Saquon, being like, I am this team, and like having to go through that, and then having like another year of just getting like brutally punished, and then the GM calling you, be like, you promise you'll give us a chance if you go anywhere else. Like, if I was him, I'd have been like, no, like, I'm gone, brother. Like,
That's the thing. Saquon is such a respectful person. Like he doesn't that's him. Like at
yeah,
his
because
wit's end.
you said you knew him personally, and that was like the most assertive you sounded like he's ever
Yeah.
sounded. I watched it and I was like, man, this dude's way too nice.
That
Like,
is,
I was like,
that's
this
who he
is-
is. He's
I was like, this is
genuinely great dude.
outrageous. Like, I would have been like, hey, thanks for giving me the opportunity. Thanks for the money. Like, it's nothing against you personally. This team sucks, and
Yeah.
I'm out of here.
I mean, he is a man of few words. Like he did, especially like, but that's Saquon, and I'm so happy. I bought his jersey the second the pre-order came out. That was the first thing I did. I'm super
His
excited.
Penn State jersey.
No, I bought the Eagles one as soon as it.
Gross.
Yeah, I'm so excited for this
So
signing.
ugly.
It's probably one of the most exciting signings that I've ever seen.
Yeah,
the
no,
Eagles do.
Yeah, that's always fun. Especially, is he a hometown guy, or did he just go to Penn State?
So he, I might butcher this. He's either from New York and then he's from New York and then played high school football in Pennsylvania and lived in Pennsylvania for a little bit. His
It's
brother
all the same.
actually,
New York, Philly, New Jersey. It's all the same.
I don't know. I mean, to a Texas guy for sure, but the rest of the world, I don't know. No, his brother actually was at. I coached one of the summer camps that Penn State had, and he was there. And then he ended up going to Temple. I think he transferred, but it's kind of a cool cycle. But
that's pretty cool.
One more thing about Saquon before we move on from him. I want to say, like, you guys aren't ready. The league's not ready for this. Like, it's just he tried. The only knock on him is he does try to make things happen too much. And Miles Sanders did the same thing. It's just Saquon actually had the talent to really, shine in that role. But he doesn't have to do that anymore. So I'm very curious.
The league's not ready. We've seen prime Adrian Peterson. The league's ready.
I
think he's gonna be very successful though.
I have not seen with my own eyes, like in person, I have not seen a better athlete. Micah is the only one that I would say is close to Saquon in terms of like pure athleticism. So I'm just excited that he's not against us.
Only if he stops podcasting.
Right.
Thanks, Malik Hooker. Anyways, from there, let's talk a little bit about the wide receivers.
Sure.
So how would you describe the way that like Devontae Smith and AJ Brown kind of play off each other, their different strengths, and how their differences kind of make the offense move a little bit better?
Yeah, I mean, Devonta Smith doesn't look like the way he plays. It's really weird. Like he can make these crazy catches and like can survive through contact. Like you just don't necessarily expect that from a guy his, build. And then you got AJ Brown who can just make magic happen as soon as the ball is in his hands. It's just a really cool 1-2 punch that you got between the two guys. One thing that I want to note with that I think is going to be different this year is AJ, according to PFF, I believe it was like 24% slot percentage for AJ Brown. And then like it was like 31%, I think, for Devonta Smith. So I think, especially with Kellen Moore, you're going to be seeing AJ Brown, particularly in the slot, way more, maybe like at 40% even, because that's how you take advantage. You got to have him on some crossing routes, like some underneath stuff, and just get him the ball in space. And that's what you want to see with that. And then you have Devonta Smith, who I feel like really good on the outside. You feel very comfortable with that, who's just making these crazy catches and essentially he's a improved version of a possession receiver because he's not just a possession receiver. There's so much more he can do. But I feel much more comfortable with Devonta Smith making a catch, like a very contested catch, than pretty much almost anyone in the league. Like he's up there for me. And I guess that's a little so.
And what makes the slot easier to create space for a player in?
Yeah, I just like it's where you have more space to work with, right? So like on the outside, you're only one way to go.
You're limited to the sideline where you're in the slot. You have essentially the whole field.
Yeah, because the defender has a two-way go basically, and
exactly
on the boundary they don't.
And you can create mismatches usually, like especially not as much anymore, but when slot receivers were like thriving maybe like 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah, when Wes Welker out on the scene.
Yeah, you see linebackers.
You had linebackers trying to guard Wes Welker in the slot, and it's just like, oh my goodness.
And then nickel became the new base.
Exactly. It's like you see these micro adjustments over time that make it a little more difficult, but it's still a very hard position to play because of that two-way go potential.
So you look at this wide receiver room, and one of the best, if not the best, 1-2 wide receiver in the league. How worried about you are you with your 3, 4, 5 receivers in a situation of any missed time with your top 2 guys? I mean, I know you can still rely on like a Dallas Goedert, Saquon can catch out of the backfield. But if you have to go any extended amount of time without one of these guys, how confident are you that one of these other guys can step up and be that guy for you if need be?
Sure. No, yeah, that would be not. It would be pretty detrimental to the team if one of those 2 guys go down for an extended period of time. I do think you can.
You're telling me John Ross can't be better than Patrick Mahomes?
Oh, I got some John Ross stories for you too in a sec. I listen. There was a guy that consulted at Penn State for a little bit who coached John Ross. He was in the NFL for a little bit, and he said that John Ross had all the talent in the world, but he hated football, and that was like the big.
That
and I don't
a lot of sense.
I'm not going to name the guy because I don't want to create any black. I'm sure this guy expressed that feeling to John Ross, but regardless, after seeing some of like him talking, like there was a clip of him talking about how he's refound his love of football. Let's assume that is factual. If that is factual, I know he's older, but I would love to see what somebody with his skill set who loves football can actually do. I don't think he's making up anywhere close to Devonta Smith or AJ
I'm sure
Brown.
The Bengals would love to see that.
I'm sure that the Giants too, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I mean, so similar vein with the Giants, Paris Campbell. I'm a huge Paris Campbell guy. I love.
I think he's kind of got a raw deal so far in the league. I mean, I think he's got something there. I don't. If he can carve out a good wide receiver 3 role, I think he could have some success for sure.
Especially with Kellen Moore, I think he could build that role really well. The thing that really
Cedric Wilson comes to mind when you look at a guy like Paris Campbell.
Very much so. And Michael Gallup.
He was a true 2 whenever he was fully healthy.
Fair enough.
But yeah, I mean, just being the kind of the gadget guy, but he can also go out there and catch you about 50 balls. Like Cedric Wilson, that year before he signed with Miami, I mean, I would say he was one of the more important parts of that Kellen Moore offense. Like, because I mean, he was just making impacts all over the field, and then especially with kind of like the end arounds and stuff like that, you don't take the unnecessary hits with your 1 or 2 receivers. I mean, he was more than willing to do that. Then he was just the gadget guy. I mean, wide receiver throws and stuff like that on trick plays.
Well, I mean, I think he was signed in Miami to play the Tyreek Hill role, and then Tyreek Hill came available, and they were getting Tyreek Hill.
Yeah, and then also Jalen Waddle. Yeah, he signed with Miami, then then all of a sudden they went out and got like 2 or 3 more guys, and he got buried, and really just never got the opportunity after that. But yeah, I mean, that offseason we were me and Quentin were both talking about Cedric Wilson in the right opportunity, probably could have really flourished.
I think so too.
But so do you think that's something Paris Campbell here is going to get an expanding kind of role with Kellen Moore?
My concern with him, the only knock that I know he has the skill set. I mean, we saw it at Ohio State. We saw it in the preseason with the Colts and a little bit his rookie year. But the Colts and the Giants have had terrible receiver rooms, and he still has not been able to see the field. That's concerning. Yeah. That's concerning.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. I think he's a guy that he could thrive in like a low wide receiver 2 if he has to be the 2. But like I think that being the third option is kind of like just the sweet spot for him. Like go out there, catch you 60 balls, but he could also run you the end arounds and kind of do all the grit work to say as far as the wide receiver position goes. So I mean, sure. I think it's a huge addition to that team, assuming your guys can stay healthy.
100%. And the other guy that I'd mention, I just think is important in this conversation is Aniyah Smith.
He's a dog.
I think he could easily carve that 3 role out by the end of the season. And actually, I was talking to my buddy about this earlier.
We don't respect Texas A&M on this podcast.
An Aggie Eagle is the worst thing you can be to Jay.
Yeah, that's like the worst thing. I'm trying to think if there's any more. I'm blanking.
I mean, dude, Aniyah Smith is an absolute dog. Though.
But like with the new return roles, I think he's almost. Yeah, I'm sorry I interrupted you, but
you're good.
You're just gonna have Jalen Hurts and return it in the new return role.
Well, we're gonna trade for Justin Fields we'll have Kenny Pickett do it. It's fine.
This is the legend himself.
He'll fake slide his way to a touchdown every time
with his tiny hands.
And then, real quick on the tight end room, is Dallas Goedert's skill set and all the RPOs that the Eagles have run in recent years, is that something that's pretty different than you think than a lot of tight ends? Are there a lot of reads for him within those, or is there a different type of awareness? Like I feel like he is such a key man in those. There has to be something a little more than meets the eye to his role.
Sure. Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think that we do a lot of reads off that utilize his skill set off the RPO. I'm thinking of a couple in my head where we have a glance off to him. I mean, we definitely have utilized him that way, and he does have a really good, his footwork and the way he positions himself is pretty impressive, and I think cements him in the top range of tight ends. I feel very confident that he'll be able to, emulate this success this year. I feel like, especially with someone like Kellen Moore.
Also, the fact that he's named Dallas is because his parents were such Cowboys fans, and then he ends up in Philly and being a great player is just like a slap in the face to God. So I just want to say that.
And we drafted him in the Dallas draft, and I think was that the David Akers speech? Was that the one where we took him?
And the Dallas was also going to draft him when you traded up one spot.
That's
before.
Awesome.
So I mean, everything that falls into that is just like everything was setting up perfectly. Like he was born to be a Cowboy. The draft was in Dallas. He was going to be a Cowboy, and then their biggest rival jumps ahead of him one spot, takes him, and he still is very, very good. So it's like that might be one of like it's just Philly like just
trolling you guys,
just disrespecting God. Like God had everything planned out for him, or whatever higher power
we're treating Goddard all right
to put your faith in.
Yeah, Dallas Goedert.
They were like, nope, we're changing fate. Like it was written on the wall. It was all there. And then Philly's like, no, we're scumbags. We're gonna screw this up, and he's gonna be a Hall of Famer.
And we do it proudly. That's a very Philly thing to do for sure.
I respect that.
All right, let's get to the O-line a little bit. And the first thing I want to ask about this is I like Cam Jurgens. I do. But he cannot be Jason Kelsey. Like, so what type of difference do you think that's going to be out there for this team for the first time in 15 years?
So, first off, this team wouldn't have won a Super Bowl without Kelsey. It wouldn't have been even a contender without Kelsey. So I feel like
glad he's gone.
I am very sad. But
Enjoy
listen,
retirement, brother.
I hope he enjoys it too, but for different reasons. But the
I
thing
love
is,
Jason Kelsey, so
I,
I'm
I
so
love
glad he's gone.
I love him so much, and the city loves him, and he'll never have to buy a
Is
drink
he-
here ever again.
Is he the most beloved Philly athlete maybe ever?
I think so. I do. I mean, like, yeah. I mean, Dawkins is always going to be loved here too, but
Dawkins never won a Super Bowl.
I know. I think Kelsey. I mean, I think Kelsey, especially with all the other stuff going on with the Kelsey family, like that
Yeah,
becoming
I mean,
such a household name. Like,
him starting the podcast really bolstered his kind of Philly King claim.
And
And
it
then-
boosted Taylor Swift's career. To be honest.
Yeah,
well,
I
yeah.
mean, imagine
Travis
Taylor
put her on the
Swift
map.
trying to. Yeah, imagine Taylor Swift trying to sell out stadiums without dating a Kelsey brother. Like, come on now. Like,
it wouldn't have happened.
they
We all
would be
know that.
empty stadiums. She would just be singing to nobody.
No
But
doubt.
so on the field, how do you think this is gonna impact them?
So here's the thing. Juergens, I'm just going to be straight up with this. Juergens was average to below average as guard last year. He just was. I mean, there was nothing that special with what he did. However, I think he's more naturally a center, which, again, having the versatility, again, could be a problem. We talked a little bit about that earlier. But Kelsey made him the heir apparent. Kelsey dubbed him with that role. He crowned him with that role. And he had another year in Stoutland University. And those two factors alone provide me with enough optimism to feel good about him being there. Will it be as good as Kelsey? No. But I don't think anybody in the league would be able to make the impact that Kelsey did. And I think there's...
Huffman.
I knew you were going to say something like that. But seriously, like, I think that expectations should be tempered for the interior offensive line in general, because it's just not the same unit as last year. But especially at that center position, I mean, you're not going to have somebody who's going off a block to make another block on a huge run. Like, some of the IQ things, and I'm not saying Juergens is not a smart person, but having that feel for the game and
familiarity aspect. Yeah. Like against Dallas last year, I was watching the tape, and it was like everyone's walking up. They all, right as soon as they get set, boom, boom, snaps out. Like, his hand wasn't on the ball, and then the snap was out. Like that, Cam Juergens isn't going to do that. That's what gives you a half step over the defense on that play.
For sure.
Little things like that just aren't going to be there. And that's a minuscule example, but it's just, I think that 100 times over the course of a season, things like that do add up.
They make a difference. And actually, another thing that you just reminded me of, Kelsey's still going to be in the building. So I think Juergens will be able to use Kelsey as I'm not saying that's going to necessarily make his gameplay that much better. I think has like acts. I know he's going to be doing his own things and like,
yeah. I mean, he's doing media now, and then I'm sure he'll be around, but I mean,
is he going to have a role with the team like formally? I don't think so, but I do think he has access. Like, they said that they weren't going to stop his access, and I do think he'll be able to come in freely now
on a Tuesday,
right? Yeah, when he doesn't have his other stuff. And I do think Kelsey is the person that would do that. I really feel like if anyone
it's so crazy. It's like as much of a Philly guy that he is now, growing up in like the Midwest and everything. It's so funny just how ride or die his wife is. Like they were talking to, it's like, if he ever ended up on another team, like, would you wear his jersey? She was just like, no, I'll wear a Cincinnati jersey.
Hey, we love true Philly fans like Kylie Kelsey for sure.
Just ride or die. I love it. But
now at one guard spot, I mean, Landon Dickerson, that's a lock, right? You're good there. But
we feel good about that contract too, by the way, especially with these recent guard signings. Resetting that market was not so bad.
Quinn Myers, man, good for him.
I know, right?
From lumberjacking in Wisconsin to $80 million man.
It's crazy. Good for him though, for sure.
Oh, dude, love Quinn Myers, dude. Like,
Yeah.
Just imagine walking into a bar in like Wisconsin in the backwoods, and you're just like, that dude's worth $80 million, and just sitting there pounding PBRs for 6 hours straight.
That sounds like awesome.
sounds like a great time.
Yeah.
But so at the other guard spot, I mean, you got Tyler Steen, or you might have Mekhi Becton kicking inside.
Yeah. Mekhi Becton is so strong. Like,
Dude.
I don't know if he likes football, but like, my God, like his rookie year with New York was like, when he wanted to play, he was treating grown men like toddlers out there. It was a sight to behold. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like,
size,
if he wants to play, like,
I mean, there's no doubt he has the
monster.
tools. Yeah, he has the tools, the athleticism, the size. He has everything you're looking for and more. Like, that's really big for a guard.
Yeah.
And listen, I don't think Steen is necessarily ready yet. He didn't look very good in the limited snaps that he had last year. And again, in Stoutland we trust. That O-line has proven time and time again that it can be successful with really anyone that's in there, and everyone gets better when they're on that team. But I would love to see Becton. Like we said, Becton at loving football, doing his thing. That's what I'd love to see. I don't know if
not
it's gonna
being
happen.
50 pounds overweight.
Yeah, exactly.
So if Becton isn't able to stay healthy there, though, I almost wonder, like, so here's my opinion on Steen, and this is my opinion from last year's draft. It was like, he reminded, actually very similar to, if any listeners are familiar with Jordan Morgan out of Arizona this year. Very similar. I think he's a really nice finesse tackle, but his arms are just too short to play tackle. And finesse tackles are not guards. They don't eat glass. They're not mean. They're not angry. They're not overpowering people. And that's where I get stuck with Tyler Steen at guard. I'm like, I just don't see the personality fit there, the play style fit there. But I think Trevor Keegan, he's a 5th round pick, so I want to pump the brakes a little. But if Mekhi Becton went down, I would want to see Trevor Keegan in there.
I totally agree, and I do think if he goes, hopefully he doesn't, and hopefully he does great, and doesn't have to be replaced. But I think that if that does happen, I could see that happening like week 13, week 14, after he's got some time and some training through the offensive line and understanding what he needs to do. I would love to see that.
Yeah, but all in all, I mean, I think this O-line, like you said, I agree with your assessment of there might be some issues up the middle with it, with Juergens, and whether it be Steen or if it's Becton, I actually feel really good about it if he can stay healthy and on the field and motivated. Like, I feel like this O-line becomes just a massive strength at that point, because I just think so highly of Becton from when he has been on the field. It's just always that question of, will he be out there? Will he be motivated? But without assuming that he's going to go through his normal course of a season, which is, maybe 5-6 games and then misses most of the rest of the season. I do agree that center right guard spot is a weak spot that I think defenses are just going to attack hard at. Now, what are your overall expectations for this team?
Yeah, I mean, this team kind of feels Super Bowl or bust. It has the makings of it. Yeah, I knew you were going to say that. I alley-ooped you on that one for sure. But I mean, that's kind of where we're at. I mean,
I think they're one of 5 teams that can win it in the NFC. So,
and they're talented enough. They have the roster.
I think the NFC is so top heavy this year. I mean, I think we're looking at Eagles, Cowboys, 49ers, which has kind of been the case for the past 5 years. And then I think like a Bears or a Packer can make Lions also up there. So, I mean, I think there's about 5 or 6 teams really with Super Bowl aspirations. Luckily for the Bears, they're so young that if they can,
they're coming though.
If they can climb that mountain, then it's just icing on the cake. But yeah, I mean, I think we're looking at about 6 teams in the NFC that really, really have a chance to where you look at the AFC and it's like you can name 9 or 10 that are like, wouldn't surprise me. Like, but I think we got some playoff teams, some young teams in the NFC, but I mean, I think it really comes down to about 5 or 6, and Philly's one of those that if it's not one of those teams, I think they would all consider it a failure on the season if they don't at least make a conference championship / Super Bowl appearance. So,
and Sam, sure. I'm going to push back a little bit on Super Bowl or bust because I look at this roster and I see a team that could theoretically win a Super Bowl, but more than that, I see a team who I think is a year away. I see a team who totally needs some more seasoning at cornerback.
But is Lane Johnson back next year?
O line.
Well, hopefully we have two Aussie tackles. We have that Lakin Vakahali.
Yeah, I mean, I think in a year with Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell experience and Cam Jurgens settling in the center role, even without Lane Johnson, I think that team is more ready.
My concern is I think the window is right now is 3 years. And so at least look, I kind of said that a little bit in jest of the Super Bowl and bust, but I do have that high of an expectation for this team to at least make a significant playoff run. But I do think if by 3 years from now we don't make it to the Super Bowl and or win, it's trouble.
Mm-hmm. Because then you start to run into need to pay more money to AJ Brown and Devontae Smith both, and Jalen Carter's extension is coming up.
And then 3 years from now, if Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean are both good, you got both of them right on the brink of getting paid. Saquon will be out the door by then, which running back is replaceable. But
Jalen Hurts,
not at that level
contract.
Yeah, it's
so I mean, I agree with the 3-year window, but I feel like anybody that's good, it's always a 3-year window, and Philly always seems to figure it out. So I mean, your window has been open for 9 years, and you got a Super Bowl out of it, which is more than I can say. So they always find a way to keep cracking that window open. So I wouldn't cap it at 3 years, but maybe this iteration of the team, maybe 3 years.
Sure.
But for all we know, they're going to have another All-Pro quarterback next year when Jalen Hurts hits the bed this season. So
yeah,
that's just how it works.
Yeah,
I don't make the rules. I just suffer through
them.
No doubt.
All right. Well, Sam, thank you so much for joining us. Do you want to tell everyone where they can find your work? Anything you want to put a highlight on? We dropped an article inside of the YouTube description. Make sure to go check it out. It's about Kellen Moore's offense against the blitz. Very well done by Sam here. So, Sam, take it away.
Oh, thank you. I just want to first off say I'm really appreciative of the opportunity. It was really fun spending some time talking with you guys and just talking ball.
Man, I had a blast.
Yeah, it was a great time. And you can find me on Twitter, Sam_Finkel. You can find me on Inside the Birds, and that's mostly where my content is. But I definitely really enjoyed this. And listen, I love talking football, but especially love talking the Eagles. So I'm very appreciative.
No, we appreciate it, man. I wish you all the personal success that one can achieve, and hope you have a miserable season. So thank you so much for coming on.
I appreciate the first half of that, especially.
Yeah, man. I hope personally, man, you just go out there and kill it and just have the great time. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you. You as well.
All right. Thanks, Sam. We'll talk to you later.
Take care, guys. Appreciate it.
Bye.
All right. That was good. You wanna break down the wins and losses real quick? I'll be right back.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'm gonna talk through these bets here. And if I'm looking at these bets, like honestly,
I like the under.
Win the division. It's the only one I like, just because the Cowboys can't win 2 years in a row. That's a rule.
Yeah. The only thing that worries me about that, I do agree with the back-to-back in the NFC East. I'm just terrified of the Commanders in that spot and laying minus 120.
Okay.
Just at minus 120. I mean, I think this is a 10-win team, and the under being at plus money, I think that's pretty good value.
Actually, I mean, I think I have him at 10-7. So the under, I didn't even think about that plus money. That makes sense.
Yeah, but that would be my only thing is they could very well not win the division, and the Cowboys also not win the division. And you have 3 teams at 10 wins. I mean, we'll talk about the Commanders next, I guess. But yeah,
we're talking Dallas next.
Oh, okay, Dallas next. Okay, yeah, you want to run through the schedule? I'll be right back.
Yeah, sure. So first one, we both got the Packers taking the Eagles week 1 in, I believe, Mexico City, or no, Brazil. Yeah, I think Brazil. But we got the Packers beating them there. We both do. And then week 2, we have the third straight year where Kirk Cousins is coming to Philadelphia in week 2. He's lost each of the last 2 times. We think it's going to be a third. Week 7, we have the Saquon revenge game. And Jay's got the Eagles there. I actually have the Giants in this one. I just think they're going to get up for it. I think that their interior D-line, or their total D-line, is a bit of a problem. I think Dexter Lawrence might wreak some havoc in this game. I think the Giants are going to win a weird game because the Giants have to win some football games, folks. Then in week 9, we're just going through some high points here in the schedule. We're not necessarily going 1 through 18, but we got the Jaguars coming to Philly. Doug Peterson returns to the Link. Sunday Night Football. Both Jay and I think the Eagles win that one. Week 12. This is the Eagles' final flight of the regular season. The rest of their road games, they take a bus to because they're going to Baltimore and they're going to DC. Those are both short areas. Like that is one way where the travel aspect of the schedule, I think, plays in big because over the last
because they're all 5 miles away from each other. Yeah. They're all the same place.
Yeah, over the last 6 games of the season, the Eagles don't get on an airplane. That matters. So, and then week 18, another Saquon revenge game, which Jay has the Giants winning. I have the Eagles. So we both think the Giants win one. It's just a question of where.
When and where, but
yeah. And then overall, we've both got them going 10-7. Obviously, I have that 10-7 winning the division because the Cowboys aren't allowed to win 2 years in a row.
Yeah, the Cowboys also have won less than 10 games in this era of Cowboys outside of the back injury here. Yeah. We can get into the Cowboys. Oh man, here we go. Should have kept them on for the Cowboys talk.
Right. On to the Dallas Cowboys.
All right. So you look at this team. Where do you see the strength in this team? I feel like we might have differing opinions.
I don't know. It's weird, man. This roster is weird. I mean, probably the corner room, the defensive backs.
I was going to go corner defense.
Either that or D-line, but I don't think their D-line's big enough to really stuff up the run unless got fat.
Yeah, so I was going to go corners, DBs. I think when you look at this corner room and you look at Deron Bland, Jordan Lewis, Trevon Diggs, you look at the interceptions and you think they're might be a little inflated, but these guys, I mean, the haters always highlight the big plays made against them, but I mean, these guys are studs out there, and they're playing pretty well locked down corners. And Jordan Lewis is a starter a lot of places in the league, playing that third corner in Dallas, especially if we can keep Bland and Diggs healthy. Then last year, we talked about it last week, but Gilmore was just absolutely torched in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
it was sad to see, honestly. Like they were clearly coming after him.
But I mean, if this corner room can stay healthy, I mean, they're gonna be very, very dangerous.
There's a
lot to like about Kalen Carson coming out of Wake Forest. A lot of guys like him. He's kind of been talked about as getting some, maybe not significant playing time, but definitely seeing the field quite a bit.
He's probably
And
going for Jordan Lewis's job.
yeah, Jordan Lewis probably out after this year either way. But yeah, if Kevin Carson can take over that role, that would be fantastic. A lot of people in the building still have a lot of hope for Nahshon Wright, and he's shown a couple of flashes in preseason games and stuff like that. But when he's actually seen significant snaps on the field, he really hasn't shown the potential you would like to see. But I mean, he's coming into year 3, so, or maybe year 4. I can't remember. But hey, man, if he can just put it together, he's got the length. He's seems to be pretty football savvy as well. So I mean, if he can just seem to put it together, and I mean, for him still being on the roster at this point is kind of a good sign. It means they still see something in him, but you would have really hoped to see him be able to contribute more significantly these past couple of years, and really hasn't got to that point yet. So some optimism there, but if he finds his way into a starting role due to injury or suspensions, anything else that can happen in the league, could be in trouble.
I have some takes with this cornerback room. I think, first off, I think DaRon Bland is going to have the best year of his career and the worst interception numbers of his career.
I think interceptions going to be down across the board with Dan Quinn gone, which I'm fine with as long as we can play good defense.
Mike Zimmer doesn't really like every defense coordinator wants interceptions, but Mike Zimmer does not value them the way that Dan Quinn does.
Yeah, it was a point of emphasis in the Dan Quinn offense, or Dan Quinn defense.
He's not going to have these guys jump and route the same way, and it's going to result in a lot less yards given up too.
Yeah,
but like a lot less interceptions at the same time. But I think the yards given up will make a better defense. But I think Trayvon Diggs is going to get in the doghouse at some point this year for jumping routes, because going back to him at Bama, he's a risk taker.
Yeah,
he's going to have a hard time adjusting to this scheme difference. I think DaRon Bland is young enough that he can be molded still. I'm not sure Trayvon Diggs is getting molded. He's been paid. He knows what he is in this league, and I think he's gunning for interceptions, hell or high water at first, at least.
If he's still getting them, though, I think you can. I think DaRon Bland is solid enough to where you could almost leave him on an island and not really shadow Diggs, but kind of maybe have that extra safety a couple of yards over in case a missed jump or something like that, because rarely does he just get beat. It's whenever he gives up the big play, it's because he's in position and he goes for the ball and misses.
Right, but I think Mike Zimmer is a red ass who's going to be pissed about that.
Yeah, well, I mean, we'll see.
Don't miss. You don't need to catch it. Just don't miss. Like that's what I see Mike Zimmer saying to him, and I think he's going to get put in the doghouse at some point. Doesn't mean he doesn't get out. Doesn't mean he has a bad year. But I think he is going to have a hard time adjusting to what Mike Zimmer wants at first.
Yeah, and I think that's to be expected, and I think that's a lot of what you do in the offseason is kind of drilling that into his head. It's like, hey, we're not asking you to take the ball away every opportunity. If we can force some 3 and outs, we're that's just as good of as a turnover. And so, I mean, I think that's going to be kind of drilled into him, but at the same time, he will take his shots. But you look at the safety room with Malik Hooker, Donovan Wilson, and Mukwamo, who a lot of people really like Mukwamo in this defense. I
really like Mukwamo.
Yeah,
it's a pterodactyl.
Yeah, so I mean, really excited to see what this transition is, because led the league in turnovers for 2 years in a row, and that sounds great on paper, but you don't really realize at the time, and then you look back and watch film, that's like not every turnover is equal. Like there were some turnovers, especially like pick sixes, that I felt like almost hurt the game in a whole, because you're just giving the ball right back to your offense or right back to their offense, you're keeping your offense off the field where they can't catch a rhythm. And it's like if you get a pick six and then the offense gets the ball back, they go down and score. It basically evens out, and then your offense goes 3 and out, and then all of a sudden they have the ball again. Like it is one of those things where it sounds stupid to say, but at the same time, it's like it's not always good to get a pick six.
No.
Like sometimes you need the ball in your offense's hands, and your defense needs to prevent them from scoring. And
even from the same standpoint, your 4th turnover against last year's New York Giants shouldn't count as a full turnover.
Yeah.
Like it just should. Like it's not fair. It's like mercy rule at that point.
Yeah.
But looking at the linebacker room, Jay, what do they got here?
So DeMarvin and Overshawn looked great last year before he was hurt. Hopefully he can
In the preseason.
We never saw any meaningful snaps, but everybody in the organization loved him. They were very, very excited for him. They thought he was going to be a key contributor. So I mean, if he can get some good snaps, I know Eric Kendricks is kind of getting older, but I mean, I know Zimmer loves him. He's a Zimmer guy. And if he could just be that leader that this defense needs, I think we're good there. Damone Clark, he wasn't bad. I mean, I would say he's probably just a little bit worse than league average, which at a position like linebacker, if you're not spending the money, it's not the worst place to be. But yeah, when you have an undersized D line, you kind of wish you would have some more beef at your linebacker spot, and that's where Leighton Vander Esch thrived. I mean, he wasn't necessarily huge, but he played big. Damone Clark doesn't have that. He's very technical. It's never going to be his fault, but he could also be the reason why they convert on 3rd and 1 for a 2-yard gain.
Yeah.
At the same time. So
Marquise Bell's the same way. I mean, Marquise Bell's a safety.
Yeah, but I don't know how much
he's linebacker.
I don't know how much he'll be playing linebacker in the Zimmer offense.
No.
That was more of a Dan Quinn deal.
That's true. He's probably more of a rover player. Like he's
playing
absolutely a hybrid spot.
Yeah.
And then on the D line, what the hell did Dan Quinn do to my Mozzie Smith?
I don't know, but Mike Zimmer.
I was texting you week 2. And I was like, what did that man do to Mozzie Smith?
Yeah, it was criminal, man. And we don't have the best track record with Michigan D linemen, apparently, in recent history. And a lot of people still have a lot of hope for Mozzie Smith. I know when Mike Zimmer got in the building, one of the first things he did was immediately go to Mozzie Smith, get with a personal trainer and a dietitian about getting weight put back on in the right way. Basically said he straight up kind of called Dan Quinn out as soon as he got in the building, and it's like this is criminal. But he seems to really, really like Mozzie Smith a lot. Also, Odigizua, I know Cowboys play a lot of primetime games, so even if you're not a Cowboys fan, you probably have a decent understanding of this team. But when this dude's on, he's one of the best D tackles in football. I mean, I definitely wouldn't put him up there with the elite, but I mean, he's right below him in that tier of good to very good, but always solid. Loved him coming out of college wrestler.
Yeah, I think the way I would describe it is he's not the most scheme versatile guy, but within the right scheme, he can be very good.
Yeah. And losing Dorrance Armstrong, I love that guy. And he was probably more of a Dan Quinn guy, so it's Dan Quinn played such a specific solid defense that you really don't know how much you're going to miss guys that whenever he's not in the building, like how they would do. And I think that kind of like when him going out and signing 3 or 4 Cowboys, like you could tell which guys were Dan Quinn guys and which guys could probably still be okay in a different system. But yeah, I mean, if Mozzie Smith can put on good weight and be a key contributor, I think this D line will be fine. And then looking at our edge positions, Sam Williams is incredible. Like
so
when this dude's healthy,
can I? So I knew Sam Williams was a like a Hellcat on the edge as a pass rusher coming out of college. I didn't actually watch much tape of him because I didn't think he'd get drafted because of the legal issues.
yeah,
But I knew his numbers and I knew like his profile enough. When I turned on the tape the other day to watch this D line, I did not realize just how thick this dude is.
yeah, he's thick, and his first
This dude can
step,
play the run, man. Like he is strong.
his first step is one of the best in the league.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he is a find. Like, I mean, I understand why he fell in the draft the way he did, but like the talent is
He's
real.
already had some legal issues in Dallas too, which is concerning. But and then DeMarcus Lawrence is just the model of consistency at an edge position. He can rush the passer. He's one of the best edge guys in the league against the run. I mean, he's gonna. He kind of flashed. What was it, 7 years ago when he got the big contract? Had the big was it 17 sack season, and then kind of fell off the national stage from there. But I mean, he's been one of the best in the game since then.
It's more role related at this point than anything.
Yeah,
I mean, he can provide you good sack numbers.
Yeah,
but if his role is base end, he's a damn good base end.
He's one of those guys where in 10, 15 years, like after he retires, like would not be surprised in the slightest if he slides into the Hall of Fame after being on the ballot for a while, and then people in 2045 will be like, oh, it's just Dallas getting the Dallas treatment. Like, but no, I mean, this dude is the model of consistency. Like, just very, very good. I mean, yeah, I love DeMarcus Lawrence.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that might be I don't know if he's going to be a Hall of Fame guy.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like, not immediately, but like if he's sitting on the ballot for about 10 or 15 years, I wouldn't be surprised if he gets in on like a weak year or something. That was kind of more what I was saying.
I see what you mean then.
Especially if he plays 5 more years.
Yeah, 5 more years. Yeah, then you start to really, you start to get the Frank Gore question of like,
yeah. But I mean, just having a really, really high peak and just being really solid to good the rest of your time. I mean, I feel like a lot of those guys kind of get in after sitting on the ballot for a while.
So overall, like I get the feeling with this D line that the talent went down, but I think they might be better. And that doesn't really add up. I just think the scheme change and the scheme difference and what they're asked. I
think Mike Zimmer is going to make a huge difference in this defense. Yeah.
Like, again, I don't think the stats will be as good, but I think they will be better football players.
It depends on which stats you're looking at. I think points per game might be a little bit better. Yards per game is going to be probably better. Like turnover numbers might not be there.
Goes up, individual stats go down.
Yes, yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if we don't like. Micah is really the only guy who can probably flash and be really high in the sack numbers, but
even then, he's probably going to be tasked with playing the run heavier though.
Yeah,
which is going to eat into his sack numbers a little.
Yeah, I mean, I think looking at this defense, if we could play good defense, force some 3 and outs, stuff like that, because that was the thing about the Dan Quinn defense. If we didn't force the 3 and out, like we were staying on the field, we couldn't get off the field unless it was a turnover. And so it's like if we're not turning the ball over, they're scoring. Is kind of how it felt with Dan Quinn, to where with Zimmer coming in, I'm really excited to see maybe just some good solid defense where we'll see 5-play drives, 6-play drives, stuff like that, and really be able to hopefully take over a game with our offense, which if you want to switch over to the offensive side of the ball, I think I haven't heard, but I'm assuming McCarthy is keeping. If McCarthy's not keeping play calling, then just fire him, because I talked about it last year, how it was damn near criminal that he's been the coach for as long as he has and just took over play calling like week 5 last year, and then we just immediately became the best offense in the league. It was just like, what the fuck have you been doing? Like, our offense has kind of struggled under you since you've been in the building. So I'm assuming he's keeping play calling duties, but
I think I believe he is.
I thought
I read that.
Okay. I was about to say, I haven't seen for sure. I've just assumed that. So yeah, you look at this offense, and really, so CD didn't go to camp, obviously. He's got contract issues, but it's one of those things where.
Can we talk the contracts?
Which one?
Contracts. Like,
yeah.
CD and Dak, that's a problem.
Yeah, I think this might be Dak's last year.
Yeah, I kind of do too. Is it Trey Lance season?
Hey, it's one of those things where it's like everybody loves everybody type deal. The people really seem to be high on Trey Lance, and I mean, he gave up a 3rd-round pick for him. Not nearly what San Francisco invested in him, but
if
people really, really like Trey Lance.
If your plan is to move on to Trey Lance, does that not make it make more sense to keep McCarthy for another year because he's the guy who has developed Trey Lance, and that's the relationship there?
I think if McCarthy, I think he won a lot of people over. I was never a big McCarthy guy, even from the hire.
Big Sean Payton guy, though.
No, no, not at all. But I think he showed a lot last season. I think that was kind of his defining moment as a Cowboys coach. And I mean, I know it didn't end well, obviously, but I just my biggest frustration is like what has been going on the rest of the time you're here, and it's like, but. I mean, I think if he can have any sort of replicated success from last year, I think he sticks around no problem. And I don't know if we run it with Trey Lance. I don't know if they go out and get somebody else, but a lot of people seem to like Trey Lance in the building. Dak has never really committed to really being the long-term guy in Dallas. I mean, he intentionally signed a shorter deal so he could make more money in the future. But it's like
he's played the Kirk Cousins card. He's played the Kirk Cousins card, and it's a league where if you want to win big,
you could sign a long-term deal.
The Pat Mahomes, Tom Brady card.
Yeah, and I mean, there's ways to go about it to where you can still make your money and also help out the team, like Pat Mahomes, $500 million, but you signed for 10 years. Stuff like that, to where like he intentionally signed a short deal so he could get back to the market quicker. And he doesn't really speak on it, but he has family speaking out on his behalf all the time, which is always weird when his brother's talking about it and stuff like that. And it's just one of those things where it's like, I'll never talk about anybody and getting their money. I mean, it's a not for long league. Get paid while you can, take care of your family, all of that. But you can't play both sides of it if that's your goal. And I think Kirk Cousins was kind of backed into the corner and played it very well, to where Dak in that scenario, it's like it kind of seems like it's the driving factor. And going into this contract, I mean, it's already like kind of turning into a nightmare scenario. So wouldn't be surprised if this is his last year. But if it is, I've kind of been on record as not the biggest Dak fan. I think last year, last year was his best year. He's really started showing command of an offense and kind of taking over games where we hadn't seen in the past. All of his big games kind of came garbage time and stuff like that, where he had great numbers, but you really kind of look into it and it's like beating up on bad teams and stuff. Like, I thought he played well in a lot of big moments last year, which historically was not the case. I mean, there was a few games.
He did have his struggles against the good teams.
Yeah.
But I mean, it was less than the previous years, but they were still there.
Yeah, no, they're still there. I mean, and that's kind of always been the thing with Dak. So it's like how
much I wouldn't even say against the good teams, against the more structured defenses and the more
he's one of those guys,
exotic looks.
He's one of those guys where if he doesn't start well, it just seems like he can't get back on track to where he did a few times last year, where he would start slow and come on strong, which we hadn't seen historically from Dak. So that was kind of the bright shining moments for him. But it's such a strange thing in the NFL because, like, I think in a perfect scenario, he absolutely can win a Super Bowl, but everything has to be perfect, and it's like, how much do you pay a guy like that? That's like, you can win with him, but you're probably not going to win. He's probably not going to dig you out of a hole, like. And there's not many guys like that either. So it's with the quarterback position, it's so tough because it commands so much money, and it's just one of those things. What do you do? And it's like we're in the Patrick Mahomes, Tom Brady era of football, to where, yeah, we're not winning Super Bowls, but like neither is anybody else.
I think you could argue there's more guys like Dak who aren't going to dig you out of a hole, but you can win a Super Bowl with. I mean, I think the league is littered with those guys.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
They're paid big money, but like they can't get over that hump. And I was talking to a friend of mine the other day about this.
That's what I'm saying. It's like, how much do you invest in a guy like that?
I actually think a big problem that's popping up with that is the slated rookie contracts. The slated rookie contracts give teams with a rookie contract quarterback such an advantage. It wipes out the advantage of having an above average quarterback.
Yeah, especially, but I mean, it at the same time,
because they can build such a monster team around guys who deserve.
You have
money,
to, yeah, and so in Dak's situation, we found the rookie quarterback that was cheap. But he hits market a lot quicker when he's a 4th round pick compared to a 1st round pick.
Right. But imagine if, I don't know, in that same time frame, Carson Wentz was paid like Matt Stafford was as a rookie.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like it would be a completely different playing field.
Yeah.
And the advantage of having a Dak Prescott would be so much bigger than it is.
It's going to take,
because of slated rookie contracts.
It's going to take a guy who is I would say Dak, Jalen Hurts. A lot of these guys are in that 8 to 13 range. Mm-hmm. It's going to take one of those guys taking a significant pay cut compared to the league average, which they're still going to be making incredible life-changing money.
Yeah.
To really maybe get over the hump for some of those guys. Like you have, I think there's maybe 5 quarterbacks in the league that you have them on your team, you pay them the money, and you'll figure out the rest. To where you have guys like Dak Prescott, it's like you have a great team around him. If everything is perfect, we can win. But when things start falling apart, you don't have that same level of confidence.
Right.
Yeah. So I think it's going to take a guy being in that skill range, taking a team-friendly deal to maybe change things. But like I said many times over, I'll never criticize a guy for getting as much money as he can, especially in a league that makes as much as the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
And some of what these guys make is pretty criminal compared to how much value they provide to the sport and everything, and in a league that any given moment could be your last play on the field. So I'll never criticize it, but I mean that's what's going to have to change for some of those guys. But moving on, looking at the rest of this offense, I mean I think Jake Ferguson is a rising star in this league.
He is.
he's.
I love me some Jake Ferguson. A year ago, I thought he was not real, but now I know he's real.
I mean, I remember we talked about it last year, and you asked me like, "What do you like about Jake Ferguson?" Like, I looked at his numbers, and it's not great. And I just told you, like, I don't know, just watching him, it seems like he's always making a play. And like, I remember you read me all of his stats, and you're like, "Yeah, I mean, I just don't, I don't understand why you love this guy so much."
And I wasn't trying to challenge you. I just was
No,
trying to
no.
understand.
I'm just saying, like, because I didn't even realize, like, to me, he was a lot better than his stats were the previous year.
Mhm.
So I was just like, I don't know, I just love this guy. Like, when you see him on the field, like, you just love him. And then last year he really shined. And I remember you texted me like week 7, and you're like, you were right about Jake Ferguson.
Yeah.
But I love this guy. Then hopefully we can get Luke Schumacher and Peyton Hendershot both have played well at that tight end. So I really wouldn't be mad with some double tight end sets and stuff moving forward.
I think they're lining up for more 12 personnel this year with
Yeah.
what their wide receiver room looks like.
Yeah. And then Brandon Cooks came on strong at the end of the season, man. I was really disappointed with him early on, but he hit a groove probably around week 8, week 9, kind of shortly after McCarthy took over play calling, and he got more involved in the offense, was running good routes. He is getting older though, and CD was the most surprising for me because I mean I really thought I've always liked CD, but I mean he was targeted. He might have been the most targeted receiver in NFL last year.
Over the last 9 games of the year, Brandon Cooks had almost 500 yards, so pacing like 950 on a season. So
yeah. But CeeDee Lamb might have been the most targeted receiver in the NFL last year. I'm not positive on that.
CeeDee Lamb's just that dude, man.
Really force fed him, but I mean he really stepped up. And
I was I was on my Bears podcast earlier today, and we had Arif Hassan on to talk Vikings.
yeah.
And one of the questions for him was, how would you describe the Vikings offense? And his answer was making stuff work for Justin Jefferson.
Yeah.
And I feel like the Cowboys and CeeDee Lamb are very similar to that.
Yeah.
You structure a lot around that player because he's that good.
Yeah. And we really just need one of these other guys to a lot of people like this rookie out of South Missouri,
Ryan
that we got
Flournoy, Chicago native.
They really like him in the building, but
Dude dunked on some fools at the Senior Bowl, man.
Yeah, Tolbert was a 4th-round pick last year.
He's got traits,
and he's looked really, really good so far. But like I've said multiple times tonight, like everybody is a Hall of Famer in training camp. So
hey, he was burning up Bradbury against the Eagles last year.
Yeah. But yeah, there's some things to like, but if we can get some good production out of another receiver not named CeeDee Lamb or Brandon Cooks, I think we're going to be in for another really, really nice year, especially with Jake Ferguson on the at tight end. And then you look at this running back room, and there's not a lot to like at first. And I won't argue with anybody that it's like a good running back room by any means, but I think you're going to see some really good production out of this room. I think Zeke is a very intelligent player. He's one of the best pass blocking running backs in the league, and he gets in the end zone, and that's where we struggled last year. Tony Pollard couldn't punch it in. I think Rico Dowdle can play between the 20s pretty well. To kind of pick up some of that slack, that burst that Zeke does not have anymore. But I mean, I think we can get some really efficient running out of Zeke, especially inside the 20s. Outside the 20s, I think Dowdle, maybe a little Royce Freeman, Deuce Vaughn. I don't really know where Deuce Vaughn fits in this, in all of this, but he looks like he's going to make the team again. He's very, very, very small, but he's quick. So maybe we'll see a little bit. But then you don't have the fullback listed here. What is his name?
I don't know.
A white guy.
I didn't see it on the roster.
Oh man, what
When
is
I
his
made
name?
this, he might
It's
not be
gonna
on the
kill me,
roster at the
but
time.
oh. Anyway, fullback kind of plays more running back, but I mean he had
Hunter
some
Lepke?
Hunter Lepke. There we go. He ran the ball pretty well last year in some spots. So, but I just don't. We're not going to rely heavily on the run, obviously. So I mean, if our receivers can do their thing, Jake Ferguson do his thing, it's going to open up the run lane big time. And like I said, I think Rico Dowdle can play well between the 20s, and then when we get inside that red zone, I mean Zeke feeds on that end zone. So I'm not sitting here really hoping for it, but I mean, if we can get 500 to 700 yards out of Zeke, assuming he's going to get 15 or 20 carries a game, with Dowdle getting about 10 to 15. I mean, I think we can get 1,200 yards out of this backfield pretty easily. And I really like this O-line a lot. Terrence Still's been.
As I'm thinking this through, I think Jalen Tolbert is going to need to play a lot because he's a good blocker.
Yeah.
And I think you're going to need to be able to run the football out of 11 personnel to make the run game work, because you're going to need to force teams out of heavy defenses. You're going to need to force light boxes for this run game to work.
I think they're going to do a lot of. I think they're going to check. You're going to see. I don't think you're really going to see a lot of like the same formation. I think that's where Mike McCarthy kind of excelled at the end of the year. Bringing in tight ends, bringing in an extra receiver, kind of going back and forth. And I think that helped out the offense a lot. And then a lot of pre-snap motion he was doing later in the year as well. Helped him kind of hit a stride. But looking at this offensive line, Terrence still can stay healthy. He's been a fantastic right tackle for us. He got paid, and not a huge contract, kind of a. He definitely got what he was worth, but I think he might have gotten more if he had hit the open market. So, pretty good deal on that. And then,
so he was playing hurt a lot of last year.
yes.
So it was 2 years ago he played really well, and then last year he really let down. But he was playing hurt a lot, and they're hoping that they get back to the guy he was 2 seasons ago, because even the tape I saw from last year, it was tough at times, but if he is fully recovered, he should be back to being a pretty solid right tackle.
Yeah, I'm excited for Terrence Steele for sure. And then Tyler Smith was all pro guard last year, absolutely fantastic.
Did he make all pro last year? I didn't realize he did.
I'm almost positive.
I think he's good enough to I love Tyler Smith, but
yeah,
I just didn't realize he actually got the recognition.
Yeah. Losing Tyron Smith at left tackle, I mean, it was about time for him to go. I mean, he was such a solid piece of that offense for a long time, but
good.
When he's on the field, he's so good, and he played a lot last year, but I think he had the longest consecutive snap streak up until like 5 years ago after Joe Thomas retired, and then like the first time he got hurt, it just seemed like his back could never really stay healthy. Then last year was really the first time he'd been healthy in quite a while. But it's hard to be like, oh, you're rock solid for a long time. Then you had injury concerns for about 3 years straight and had one good season to keep them around. So, I mean, I think it was about time to move on from him. And then Tyler Guyton, man, it's like when the Cowboys pick an offensive lineman, it's always somebody that I'm like, well, I don't know. And they always seem to make it work. So, I mean, I have trust that he's going to be able to figure out that left tackle position. And
so Tyler Guyton cleaned up at the Senior Bowl day 1, and then day 2 he kind of fell back down to earth, and day 3 he landed in the middle. So you saw him kind of go through the full progression of really good, really bad, and then like good. And he's so raw. Like, if I'm being honest, at the Senior Bowl, I couldn't. Well, before the Senior Bowl, I couldn't get my hands on his tape because it's only one season of tape, and Oklahoma did not it was just hard to find their tape going into it. And So I was going into it pretty much blind, outside of just hearing Dame Brugler saying, once you see this kid, you're going to get it. You're going to
Yeah.
understand. And once I saw him, I understood. Like,
Yeah.
there is a smooth athleticism that he has that is rare, but he has no idea what he's doing half the time. So, like, it's a really weird balance. I think Cowboys fans are in for a rough first half of the season with him, but I think it's going to be worth it in the long run because I think he is going to be he has so many traits. He can be such a good football player if stuff starts to click for him. And there's a lot of reasons to think stuff will start to click for him based on the way that he has learned in such a short period of time. But it's just hard to know. With their O-line coach, I do think he will figure it out.
Yeah, and I mean, like I said, I kind of stopped questioning first round offensive lineman for the Cowboys. So I'm just hoping and praying he's good. But I mean, the biggest concern for this team is at the center position, obviously.
Who is Brock Hoffman?
He's a stud, dude.
Where did he come from?
Where did he go?
He is not a real person.
Cotton Eye Joe. Yeah.
Right over my head.
I don't know, but he looked decent at times last year, but I mean, of all the guys that get media love and like love from beat writers and stuff like that, I mean, he seems like the guy that they are really, really, really loving this offense.
Out of high school, he committed to Georgia Southern University, and then he waffled on it to go to Coastal Carolina. And then
something about the Chanticleers, baby.
And then 2 years later, he waffled on them to go to Virginia Tech.
Yeah.
That's who Brock Hoffman is.
That is who Brock Hoffman is.
I don't blame him. It sounds like he upgraded and then upgrade again to get his name out there. Good for him.
Yeah, he's a gym nut. He's incredibly strong. He's like the big like meathead locker room guy that you see in movies. Apparently, just like anytime like there's a football movie and there's like a guy in the background just like yelling, like putting up like 350 on the bench like 7 times, like that seems to be him. He plays angry. He's everything you want as far as like mentality and everything goes. So hoping he wins this job, but we got a guy to Kansas State, Cooper Beebe, that we love too. So it's like
I feel good about the floor at the position because you have Cooper Beebe.
Yeah,
but like,
and I think we're gonna figure it out one way or the other. He does have his
limitations though. Like I know he tested really well athletically, but as a mover, the dude moves like a refrigerator. He's just too thick, too wide. Like he is physically limited in the way that he can fit through spaces. And there's only so many times where bowling through it, like where breaking through a doorway is good. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes you need to get through the doorway.
Yeah. So when this draft first happened, I thought there was like a slight possibility they were still going to play Tyler Smith at left tackle, Brock Hoffman at center, and play Cooper Beebe at guard, and then maybe sit Tyler Guyton for a year, or just kind of let him ease into it, and then kick everybody back in and figure out the center position from there. But it's looking like day one they're going to keep Tyler Smith at guard, Zach Martin at guard, and then with Terrence Steele and Guyton on the bookends.
The dude's still doing it, man. I got a bunch of clips of him, and he is just
I mean, I don't want to gloss over Zach Martin, but at this point, it's like Hall of Famer. Like he's fantastic. He's the model of consistency. He's been one of the best players in the league for year after year. I mean, he kicked out to tackle a couple of years ago when we had injuries. He was just fantastic at tackle. Yeah. Hadn't played tackle since college. Was just incredible at right tackle for like 3 games. Like I think he was like one of like PFF's like highest rated tackles in a 3-game stretch. Like hadn't played it in his 8-year career. Just just incredible. Just a dog. Like, what else can you say about Zach Martin? It's just, you love to have him on this team. So, yeah, I mean, a lot of optimism here. 10.5 win total. One in the division at plus 155. This seems like the year, if there's ever any year that you got to make the Super Bowl run. And I mean, it's just typical Cowboys saying, I guess, since the 90s. But I mean, you look at the future of Dak Prescott and some of the other hard decisions that are coming up. And it just seems like if it's not this year, like we were talking about it with on the Philadelphia about having a 3-year window. This definitely is not a 3-year window.
Yeah.
I mean, this is year 3 of the year 3 window. Like, so I mean, at some point you got to nut up or shut up. And
I mean,
I have the argument all the time with Philly fans, with Niner fans, and I guess Philly did win their title. About the argument of like, well, they'll say like, oh, they always choke in the playoffs. And I'm like, well, what is choking in the playoffs if you're getting there? Because it's like the 49ers have lost 3 Super Bowls in the past 10 years. Mm-hmm. It's like, would you rather lose 3 Super Bowls? Like, what difference does it make if you're not winning a title? So it's like
first or last.
Yeah, the playoff success really it means nothing to me. I mean, you got to win in the playoffs, but it's like we've been dominated by 2 quarterbacks for going on 30 years now.
If I'm just looking at this roster and I'm ignoring contracts, this is a team that's a year away to me.
Ignoring contracts, yes, especially with the young guys, offense more so than defense.
Well, even on the defense, I'm like, I don't know what I have up the middle with Mozzie Smith and Golston. This is a learning year for me.
Yes,
where you can make the playoffs, but I don't think if contracts are out of the equation, I'm not expecting a Super Bowl. But because of the contracts, it's like this Dak needs to be more than he has shown to be. Yeah. Because this is the last shot.
If we can see a similar version of 2023 Dak, I think. I mean, the top end of the NFC is going to be very, very tough, but I don't see any reason why this team can't win 11 or 12 games. And it's just going to come down to what you do in the playoffs, which has been the Dallas Cowboys for 30 years now. But I mean, like I said,
the value bet I'm taking here is probably the over 10.5.
Yeah, I think.
I've got them at 10 wins, but you're telling me I can get plus 164 at 11.
They've won
that's one difference.
They've won more than 10 games every year. Dak and McCarthy have been together, except the broken ankle year. I wouldn't expect any difference this year. I mean, I think this defense is going to keep people lower scoring, to where historically especially under Dan Quinn, if we didn't score at least 24, we probably weren't winning. Well, except in the games where we would like throw a shutout and score 40. But if the other team scored more than 20, we weren't winning most of the time. It seemed like. So
yeah. So week 1, you got the Amari Cooper revenge game going into Cleveland. And then week 4, Dak Prescott going to the New York Giants, Thursday Night Football. Dak's won 12 straight against the Giants. We both got the Cowboys in that.
12 straight is crazy.
I know. That's why I put it there. It's insane.
That's another thing that when people talk about Dak Prescott, he wins in the division.
Mm-hmm.
Like that has been loses to every AFC team, it feels like, but he wins in the division.
And then I can't believe this Lions-Cowboys game isn't a primetime game after
it's criminal
controversy over last year's Lions-Cowboys game in primetime. Like,
and being Lions-Cowboys just in general, you have 2 of the best teams in the NFC on top of that.
Yeah. And then in week 8,
especially when you think of Dallas Cowboys, they get every primetime game that they can get.
Like, I know they run up against the limit. I would just think the Lions-Cowboys would be like at the top of the league.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cowboys 49ers won 3 straight against Dallas. We both have the 49ers making it 4 straight.
Yeah.
Cowboys Falcons in week 9. Kirk Cousins is 2-9 against Dallas and facing off with his former head coach in Mike Zimmer.
I was at one of the wins, and it was a Sunday night primetime game. One of his 2 wins. And me and my whole family just talked all week. We were like, oh, Kirk Cousins in primetime talking so much shit. And Vikings went out there and just destroyed us.
Then week 11, you got the battle for Texas, Texans and Cowboys. Texans are 2-4 against Dallas all time.
Always play them close,
winning that one. And then week 12 and week 18, the Cowboys play the Commanders, and Mike Zimmer can show Dan Quinn how to call a defense.
Yeah, I'm really excited for those games.
And then week 13, you got the Giants again on Thanksgiving, and Dak Prescott may have won 13 straight against the Giants at this point, maybe.
Yeah.
So overall, I've got the Cowboys at 10-7. You've got them at 12-5.
Yep. And yeah, a lot of optimism for this team. I mean, the signs of weakness are clear signs of weakness, but like I said, I mean, I think there's enough there to, if it goes right, I mean, and really, I mean, what we're looking for is Parsons can't fall off at the end of the season like he has the past couple of years. I mean, I don't know if it's a scheme thing. I don't know what it is. But yeah, he just kind of ghosts on the end of the season. And after, like, he's been 2 years in a row, like the leading candidate for defensive player of the year going into like week 12. And then all of a sudden, like, you look up at the end of the season and you're like, oh, Micah Parsons is still playing. Like, and you can see it on the film too. It's crazy. It's not just on the stats.
Yeah. All right. Let's get on to some Washington Football Commanders.
Yep. Oh.
Yep.
Oh man. This team probably scares me more than any division rival has scared me in a long time.
Which is shocking to me.
It's hard to. They're not. I don't think they're going to be good, but then at the same time, it's like they might be good. Jaden Daniels, first and foremost, it's like I don't think he's as good as RG3, but I think he could have like an RG3 type of rookie season, and that was a scary time. And then you look at these receivers with Dotson and McLaurin, like 2 very, very good receivers in my opinion. And then is this McCaffrey's little brother out of Rice?
Yeah. Luke.
Just a McCaffrey on the field always scares me. But and then everything we talked about Dan Quinn, like if he gets a couple pick sixes on you, especially with the Cowboys offense, like offensive turnovers for the Cowboys always scare the shit out of me. So it's like this team's probably going to be able to turn you over. But I mean, Emmanuel Forbes last year was not very good, and I just don't know how. I don't think bringing Dan Quinn makes him better at all. If anything, I felt like he's going to be a complete liability out there in the Dan Quinn defense.
I disagree with that. I think Dan Quinn will take away the consequences, and he will be able to play more free. Yeah. I don't know that he will be a good corner doing that, but I think he'll get interceptions doing that.
Yeah, he very well could, but
I think he could be like Deron Bland was last year for the Cowboys. Like a lot of interceptions, a lot of yards given up.
Then they went out and signed Dorrance Armstrong, Dante Fowler, Tyler Biadasz, just Cowboys light over here. Then Bobby Wagner, I mean, he's still been solid, even bouncing around the league the last 4 years.
Yeah,
still been a solid linebacker. I mean, there's just enough here to be like, if everything goes perfect for him, like they could make a run, but I don't truly see it happening. Like, I think signing Austin Eckler was like one of the silliest things I've ever seen in my life. Like,
Especially when we already had Brian Robinson.
Brian Robinson's a much, much better running back.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, why would you pay a guy like Austin Eckler at this point? It's like, yeah, that made no sense to me. But who knows? Maybe he'll have another 20 touchdowns. Like,
yeah,
probably not, but
I don't think so. But like, it's weird to me because Jaden Daniels wasn't a check down thrower either. Like,
yeah,
it's not like he's a guy who I would expect to utilize the running back out of the backfield heavily. I mean, maybe he will. Maybe I'm just wrong on that. But like, I think he's going to be trying to extend plays more often than finding his check down.
yeah. But this defensive line, I mean, nasty.
I don't know.
I mean, Deron Payne and Jonathan Allen are incredible on the interior. I
So
think
Deron Payne's in his prime. Jonathan Allen took a step back last year. Like, I still think he's good, but he was not the same player last year.
Yeah. Well,
he's 30 now.
Oh man, don't say that. I'm 31.
I'm 32.
Yeah, but Dorrance Armstrong, I mean, he's solid, but I mean, as a full-time edge guy,
he's a number 3 and Fowler's a 3B.
Yeah. So I mean, we'll see how that works.
Frankie Louvu's a hybrid player. He's going to be playing some edge for them, I think. I'm not sure exactly how that's going to fill in, but let's start going through the positions. Like, let's just start with the skill spots. We already talked some Eckler. Brian Robinson, I think he has to be on the field more. I mean, he's
going to be the starter
as a receiver.
I would be willing to bet Brian Robinson's the starter in that offense.
And then Terry McLaurin he's right up there with, he's a top 15 receiver in this league, I think.
Easily,
pretty clearly. Yeah. And Jahan Dotson, there's stuff to like. I think that he's going to get better from here. Sam Howell, I think, missed him a lot on a lot of throws, but also I think Sam Howell gave him opportunities that not every quarterback's going to give him. So like, I don't know exactly how to weigh that difference. After that, I mean, Olamide Zacchaeus and Diami Brown, like, they have some decent
Jamison Crowder is always
nothing that I feel that good about.
Jamison Crowder is always good for a couple of flash plays, and you're like, oh, we got something here, and then it's just Jamison Crowder.
Yeah. And then at tight end, Zach Ertz and Ben Sinnott. That's my dude. Ben Sinnott is I love Ben Sinnott. I don't think he was a reach in the second round one bit. That's exactly where I had him going.
And think he could be like a
tight ends do come on a little slow. I think. His comp could definitely, like, physically, they're very similar, very, very similar.
Yeah,
and even
especially with the way Jaden Daniels likes to play. So,
like, I don't want to put that expectation on him, but like, I do think he has that upside.
Yeah, and then Zach Ertz is kind of a nothing burger for me. I mean,
Zach Ertz is a guy who's going to take snaps while Ben Sinnott gets acclimated to the NFL level.
Yeah.
Because I don't think he's going to come on as hot as Sam Laporta did. I just think that's very rare.
And Ben Johnson also, I mean, dream scenario there. Looking at this offensive line, Andrew Wiley, I think he's still very, very solid
he's fine
tackle, but
he is. I think Andrew Wiley is the definition of fine. Like, you're not necessarily looking for an upgrade, but you wouldn't turn one down either.
Yeah, that's probably the best way to put it. Then not a great tackle room though.
No, I mean, Brandon Coleman is looking like the starter, 3rd round pick at TCU. A lot of talent, a lot of stuff to like from him, but I'm not sure he's a day one starter in the NFL, and I think he's going to take his lumps on this team.
Yeah,
like if he's the starter, if he's not, it's probably Cornelius Lucas, who's been around the league, been an okay guy, more of a swing tackle, but he can get the job done. Just not a lot to be confident about there, though.
Yeah, and then everything you said about Andrew Wiley just reiterated into Tyler Biadasz. Like, he's a center.
Except for everything we know about Tyler Biadasz is between 2 All-Pro guards.
Truly, but yeah, at the end of the day, like, he was a center. Like, if they would have made it work, where if he would have stayed in Dallas, it would have been like, okay, we'll run this back. But nothing about Tyler Biadasz. Like, I wasn't heartbroken when he left, like, whatsoever.
Yeah.
He was good. Offensive lineman coming out of Wisconsin, had some injuries in college. And he was just fine. But
The only thing I really feel confident about on this offensive line is Sam Cosmi, who has become one of the better guards in the league.
Yeah.
Like Sam Cosmi's really good. Outside of that, I have a lot of question marks. Like I think Biotis is probably an upgrade from what they had last year,
Yeah.
but I
Some
still have
good D lines
questions
in this
about
division,
him.
though.
I think Nick Allegretti is a nice swing interior guy who did a lot of really nice stuff for Kansas City. But I think he's very similar to Andrew Wiley, where I think his upside is a fine starter, but I'm
Yeah.
not sure that he is. I'm not sure that's what he is yet, though. I'm sure about it with Wiley already because I've seen him do it. I haven't seen Allegretti do a full season of being fine.
Yeah. And then, I mean, you look at some of those interior D line guys for like Philly and New York. It's like, oof.
That's my big issue with this. This division has some real monsters in the defensive trenches, and
Yeah.
I'm not sure how Washington overcomes that. Like,
Yeah.
I loved Ricky Stromberg in the draft last year. I wish that he got more opportunity to start, but I think he's a center, and you just
Yeah.
signed Tyler Biotis, so I don't know how you make that work. And then you got All-State Chris Paul.
All-State Chris Paul. Yeah. Well,
I mean, he's young. Maybe there's something more there. He wasn't very good last year.
The one thing we're forgetting about this offense is Cliff Kingsbury, OC.
I mean, he might be able to make some stuff work between Jaden Daniels' mobility and we saw him do it with Kyler with a pretty rough O-line.
I think this offense is going to be really, really good. I mean, we saw some of Cliff Kingsbury in Arizona, but I think head coach Cliff Kingsbury and offensive coordinator Cliff Kingsbury are two completely different people.
Yeah, I think Cliff is going to look a lot better than people expect. I don't know if it means this offense is going to be good, but I think it's going to be better than the offense should be. I think Cliff got overly disrespected in the hiring cycle. And I mean,
oh yeah,
we're biased, so take that with a grain of salt. But like, I don't really get, like, I know the offense was rough sometimes in Arizona, but he was head coach, not OC. I think I think that he is a really smart offensive mind who's going to find ways to make things work.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's another thing that really worries me. But yeah, we can go over to the defense side of the ball.
Yeah. I mean, Deron Payne is a guy who's playing great in the prime of his career. You wouldn't tell from these stats, but I think he's still a monster. Nose tackle stats, just PFF grades do not. I don't know what they grade nose tackles on, but I disagree with them all the time on nose tackles. So like there's clearly a disconnect there between my eyes and their eyes.
Yeah.
Like if you're grading a nose tackle, I'm not saying this is what they do. Like if you're looking at a nose tackle the same way you look at a 3-tech, you're looking at very different things. And I think a lot of a nose tackle's job is pretty thankless and probably doesn't go on the grade sheet very cleanly. So it's probably tough to fit into the box. But I think Deron Payne is a very good nose tackle. And Jonathan Allen was still good last year. But these were some of the lower numbers of his career.
And
which makes me wonder, is he on the downswing? And I hope he's not. And I hope I'm wrong. Because I think there's a chance the Bears are going to try to trade for him this season. But
worked out last time.
I really think the Bears are going to try to pry Jonathan Allen away as long as they don't think he's on the downswing. But PFF pass rush is actually really reliable at predicting this. They have been historically. PFF pass rush grades, once they start declining, usually the player's decline is not far behind. They didn't decline that far yet, but if they keep going in that direction, like if this year it's a 66 or 67, then you start to get really worried that like, okay, this is dropping off fast.
Yeah. Remember Clelin Ferrell?
Yeah. He's actually turned into a decent football player.
Oh no, just that John Gruden draft. I'll just never be able to get out of my head.
What do you expect when you hire a TV personality to be your GM?
Yeah. Who did they pass up in that draft for Clelin Ferrell?
Everybody.
There was one big name who's still really good.
I mean, both Josh Allens.
But yeah, okay. Yeah, I knew Joshua,
Devin White, Danny Dimes, Josh Allen, TJ Hawkinson, Ed Oliver, Devin Bush, Jonah Williams,
Ed Oliver,
John
I think
Gary,
was the guy. Yeah.
Christian Wilkins, Jeff Simmons,
and Clelin Ferrell was like considered by many like at best like a late first.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
it
it was
was just
shocking.
a boneheaded pick, but he's turned into a decent football player. Like
Yeah.
I don't know that he's a starter caliber player, but he's like in the rotation. He's like a Dorrance
You're going to need a
Armstrong, I
rotation
think.
here because there's really I don't really see a
Yeah.
starting edge here.
I mean, Cleveland Farrell, Dorrance Armstrong, KJ Henry, and Dante Fowler. All those guys belong on an NFL football field,
Oh,
but they're not
absolutely.
starters.
Yeah, if they had one anchor here, like a Montez Sweat, and then your rotation was these guys with Montez Sweat, it'd be fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I just and that's where like I see the talent in the 2D tackles, but I don't see much behind them. I don't see anything in this edge room. And I'm just not sure how you're getting pressure with this D line all that well when you don't have, unless Jonathan Allen goes back to what he was 2 years ago. Then I start to see it more. But even then, it's a one-man show. And I'm just not sure your secondary is strong enough to support that.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Yeah. And then at linebacker, we already talked about a little Bobby Wagner still doing the dang thing. Like he's not what he was, but he's still really
Jamin Davis, was this year 2 for him?
Year 3, I think.
Oh, year 3 out
Maybe.
of Kentucky.
Yeah.
I was thinking this was year 2, but yeah, it might be year 3. If it's year 3, that makes more sense because I know he wasn't that great last year. But yeah, it seems
I think he
weird.
improved last year. Like I think he was on the up last year, where the year before he was probably on the downswing.
I was really surprised they went out and got Louvu and Wagner with this Dan Quinn offense. I mean, Wagner makes sense.
What Louvu
Quinn
is?
connection.
Do you know what Louvu is?
Tackling machine.
He's Micah Parsons.
Oh, you think he's going to play more of a pass rusher off the ball?
In the role, he is what Micah Parsons was as a rookie. He's going to move all over and pass rush from all over. He's a hybrid football player, very, very niche role, but he's good at what he does.
Yeah.
So
he was solid in Carolina for a long time, kind of under the radar guy.
Yeah, I mean, he's not a great linebacker, but he's a really good like chaos creator.
Yeah.
And then it's a lot of names. I don't know what to do with this cornerback room. I really have no idea what to think. Like I want to be optimistic about it, but I see Michael Davis, who's had his most success probably as a big nickel guy. Benjamin St. Juste, who's had his most success as a big nickel guy. Jartavius Martin, who's a nickel guy. And then you add Mike Sainristril, who's a nickel guy. I just don't understand. I don't.
Yeah, somebody's got to play outside here.
Like Emmanuel Forbes is going to play outside.
Yeah.
That's a big risk after last year. Like, you're not going to throw away a first-round pick either, so you're going to give him a shot. But, like, I just don't understand the construction of this room.
Yeah, a lot of what they're doing here doesn't make the most sense. So it'll be interesting for sure. But it's like when you're looking at a Dan Quinn defense about the boom or bust type, it's like it seems like they have the players for that, but this could be a team that gives up 30 points a game and forces 3 turnovers a game. Like,
yeah, I mean, I do think that's kind of where you're looking at them, because I think you're just going to tell this room get interceptions.
Yeah,
hell or high water, get interceptions, and we're going to live with the results.
Try to just outscore people.
They're probably not going to give up more yards than they did last year doing it. You know,
yeah.
I mean, they gave up a ton of yards last year. And the safety room I actually do like. I think Derek Forrest, there's some stuff to like in his profile. Jeremy Chin, I think they're picking him up at the right time because he's cheaper right now, but I think he's a much better football player than what his contract price says. And Percy Butler did some nice stuff for you last year. So I do like this safety room. It's just this cornerback room scares the daylight out of me.
Yeah. No. Yeah, I don't really have a whole lot of confidence in this team, but they scare me as a division rival.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah. I mean, if I'm, I don't know, if I'm betting anything, or I'm betting the under 6.5.
Yeah. Either the under or playoffs.
I'm not touching playoffs with this team.
I mean, it's just, I think I only have them winning like 3 games. So, I mean, like, I'm not really scared of them, but at the same time, like, I see a path to success with this team. But
You know
everything
what?
that
I think so. You're saying the RG3 comparison. You know what I think the comp is? Rookie Deshaun Watson just running around with like his a chicken with his
Yeah.
head cut off and
Very
somehow just
inaccurate.
throwing bomb after bomb after bomb for touchdown. Like that's the upside that I would see, and I think it comes back down to earth eventually, but it might not be his rookie year that it comes back down to earth.
Yeah. So looking at this team, I mean, we both like Bucks week 1, split Commanders Giants week 2, Bengals Cardinals. I like the Commanders
The
against
Cliff
the Browns.
Kingsbury revenge game week 4.
Oh yeah, we both have the Cardinals in that game. Yeah, I don't even think we brought that up when we were going through this.
I just like the Cardinals at home.
Yeah,
I added a bunch of notes to this today.
We'll get to the Cardinals later on. Probably next week, I would assume, and save the AFC South or NFC South for last.
Yeah, we can do that.
Because I mean, yeah, NFC West is also a very, very good division. So yeah, we can definitely do that next week. But yeah, I mean, hitting some high points here. We both like the Bears, obviously. Battle of the top 2 draft picks. That should be interesting. We both have the Cowboys sweeping here. You got the Titans winning a game late in the season versus the Commanders. One of the few Titans wins we gave them.
I went in and gave them 1 or 2 more. Just I feel like that team is too good to.
We both like the Commanders going down to New Orleans late in the season. Jaden Daniels going home.
Lock that one in, I think.
Yeah, so it looks like I gave them more wins than I thought. What am I like? I think I'm at 6 wins for them.
Let's see.
And you're at 5.
You got them at 6 and 11. I've got them at 3 and 14.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. To me, they're anywhere between 3 and 9 wins. Because if they can, I have them at 6, but it's kind of one of those things where they could easily lose 3 more, or they could easily win 3 more. I think 6 is kind of the sweet spot for them. But and if everything goes right, I mean, this team, their schedule's not too incredibly hard. So
I think I had them and the Giants at the same record earlier today, and I was like, I need to make a decision between these two. Which one do I like more? And I went with the Giants.
Yeah. Oh, you like the Giants more?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I definitely like. I think the Giants are going to be absolute trash this year, and we can just move on to them next. Really like their coaching staff in New York.
Hang on. Let me get a clean intro for the video. All right, on to the New York Football Giants.
New York Football Giants don't have a lot to like about this team. Hate the quarterback, hate the running back situation. I like Malik Neighbors, your first round pick, but really, really like Brian Daboll there, head coach. So I mean, maybe we're turning something around here, but it's like, what are we really doing here in New York, guys?
Okay, I'm gonna throw out my pitch of why to like the New York Football Giants.
Jalen Hyatt.
So you've got a player, Malik Neighbors, who might be instant offense. Instant offense. This guy can take it to the house anytime he touches it. He's got that type of physical ability.
He might be the next Kadarius Toney.
He might be, or he might be the next
Justin Jefferson,
Jalen Waddle,
Joel Waddle.
Yeah, like he's got that type of physical ability that is just like different. And then you got Darius Slayton as a solid number 2 receiver, and maybe Jalen Hyatt can add something. You start to talk about, you can see the bones of an offense built around that.
Do you want to know what I like about this team?
What?
Thibodeau, Lawrence, and Burns.
That's where I was going next. That's why that is really why I like this team, because I do not know how you block those 3. I was thinking about this a lot today. Dexter Lawrence alone is hard to block.
We just talked about that offensive line and Washington.
Yeah.
Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau, and Dexter Lawrence is a nightmare.
Yeah. That is so much like that. Even like whatever you think of Thibodeau, he's a starter in the NFL. Like
His
he's good enough to start on a lot of teams.
his
Brian Burns,
first step is insane.
yeah.
Dude
Brian
gets
Burns
off
is
the
a legit
ball.
nightmare as a pass rusher. And Dexter Lawrence needs 2 guys. I don't know
Yeah,
how you block this D line.
Dexter Lawrence might be the best interior D lineman in the game right now.
I think he is. I think he's with Aaron Donald retired. I think Dexter Lawrence is the biggest problem in the league on a D line.
Yeah,
Like so, that's where this D line is going to win them some games alone.
yeah, maybe if their offense doesn't just throw it away.
Like, I mean, they don't even have anything behind Dexter. If Dexter Lawrence goes down, this whole thing might go crumble down because you got Raheem Nunez, Roaches, Jordan Phillips is something, but he's not like a reliable something. And DJ David, like these names here on the interior behind Dexter Lawrence aren't really anything worth discussing. But Dexter Lawrence is that good that I just don't really care.
Yeah, he's incredible, and it's one of those things where it's like if you can really get a rebuild quick, he can be an Aaron Donald type piece and a run in the playoffs. But it's like, at what point do you just get what you can for him when you look at this roster? Like, I know that GMs don't think that way. I mean, you're always wanting to build, but it's like what you could get for that man right now. And looking at this roster, it's like, would it be better for us in the next 5 years? But if they continue to be as bad as they've been, maybe you strike gold on a quarterback and it all works out, and he is the shining piece on a Super Bowl run. Because if there's one thing assuming I have a better than league average quarterback going into the playoffs, half decent wide receiver room. If you give me any pick of anything, give me a top 3 interior defensive lineman, a Chris Jones, a Dexter Lawrence, an Aaron Donald. Give me that on a playoff team over just about anything.
Yeah, I mean, I think you don't. Dexter Lawrence is a true unicorn, and you don't trade true unicorns. Like that's the way that I look at it. And if this team, if it does not work this year for this team, you're talking a top 5 pick. If maybe a quarterback shows himself, like I look at this team, like I even go to the O line. I have my franchise left tackle. I just spent a big draft pick on a center. He sucked last year. But I spent that draft pick, and I have reason to think he'll get better if he gets better guard play around him. Because low key, last season, this O-line might have been the worst O-line I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Andrew Thomas was missing time. Evan Neal sucks. Like, it's at that point with Evan Neal. It's not.
Yeah.
Changing.
Evan Neal
he can kick inside the guard, but he's so big that I don't even know if that's an option because he's going to get out leverage constantly.
And I loved him coming out, too. I mean,
so did I.
I really thought they nailed it with that. And
you know what I think it is? He is always an inch slow. And you didn't notice it in college because everything was an inch slower, but his play speed has not matched the NFL speed. He's always just a touch behind everything. And it's infuriating. Yeah. I was distinctly watching for him today. Watching his tape is just utterly infuriating because it's like you're so close, but you can't close this gap.
Yeah, and then Andrew Thomas, when he's on the field, he's very good, but missing time definitely doesn't help.
Well, he only missed time this year. It hasn't been a consistent issue, so I feel good about that. You just paid John Runyon, like that's fine. He's an okay guard. Like he's nothing special, but he's okay. Jermaine Illuminor, I think Jermaine Illuminor should be starting at right tackle. He might be playing guard, but if he's at right tackle, then you have a hole at guard, is the way I see it. Like Marcus McKeithen might be okay at guard, but like I don't know. I think this O-line this year is still missing pieces, even if Illuminor's kicking a right tackle, but they're going to be better than last year because last year, like that, I lived through the worst O-lines in Chicago Bears history and watched them with a smile on my face saying, this is fine. Jay Cutler's great. And last year's O-line for the Giants was somehow worse than that. Like it was just some of the worst O-line play I've ever seen. New O-line coach there this year. Maybe it'll improve. I think JMS will get better with the guard play around him improving. I didn't love JMS in the draft. I wasn't sold on him. But to me, when I watched his tape last year, I got the vibe. It's pure speculation. But one of the traits that was really strong with JMS was how bendy he was, how flexible his frame was to me. And he had no flexibility last year. I think the O-line coach told him to put on weight, and he got really stiff, and that really limited him in pass protection. And like some of the run blocking stuff I still saw from him last year, but in pass pro, he just seems so stiff that I think a new O-line coach can work with that more. But like, I look at this team, and you just got a guy who, again, might be, but instant offense. Like Malik Neighbors is different physically. He just is.
he's incredible. And then in aging Allen Robinson, I mean, maybe he can give you a little bit of production. I don't think so, but Jalen Hyatt can fly.
Yeah.
If Jalen Hyatt can give you some good work on the outside, opposite of Malik Neighbors, that could be dangerous. But you still have to worry about whether Mr. Daniel can get them the ball or not. But I mean,
I don't have a Daniel Jones slide on this one. Missed too much time.
You definitely you have the potential to bust this thing open. And Devin Singletary has just been very, very solid everywhere he's been. So I mean, if
like a cockroach, you just can't get rid of him.
Yeah. So I mean,
everyone wants to get rid of him, but you just can't.
If you can get these receivers the ball on the outside and really open up this offense, I think Devin Singletary can eat. But
and I like Daniel Bellinger at tight end too. Like I don't think he's anything special, but I think he's a solid to good tight end as he continues to grow into the role.
I mean, as cliche as it is, I mean this begins and ends with Daniel Jones on this offense.
Yeah, no, it's all on Daniel Jones' shoulders. And I mean, I forgot to even mention Tyrone Tracy, the rookie out of Purdue. Like the dude is a physical specimen. Like if you can get anything out of him, you start to feel good about the running back room, or better about the running back room. It's not Saquon, but like, you have some pieces.
But I feel like they were almost too heavily reliant on Saquon to where, especially with Malik Neighbors coming in and everything, like you might see better numbers out of a Devin Singletary than you saw out of Saquon, just for the fact that the offense is more opened up if Daniel Jones can get him the ball.
Yeah. And then not even to mention on the D line, just one more thing. You still have Azeez Ojulari. Like he's missed a lot of time, but this guy had 8 sacks as a rookie. Like when he's been healthy, he has been a good football player.
Mm-hmm.
But then looking at the linebacker room, like you're in a pretty solid spot, I think, with Bobby Okereke.
Yeah.
Bobby Okereke. That's it. Bobby Okereke and Micah McFadden. You still have Isaiah Simmons there, kind of
I've been waiting for Isaiah Simmons to kind of find his role on a defense because I think he's insanely talented, but he's just like a tweener to where it's like if he gets with a defensive coordinator that can find an established role for him, or at least a package or something, I feel like he can still thrive on an NFL defense. But yeah, I think he's insanely talented. I think his body type just really doesn't fit a position on the NFL defense. But if somebody can figure him out, I think he can be an absolute stud.
Yeah, he's like he needs to be with the right DC to unlock it all. But like, it needs to work a certain way, and it hasn't worked.
He's got to find a scheme specific defense, and like I wouldn't be surprised if it's with this defense or he ends up.
One of the Baltimore guys, one of the guys from Mike McDonald, like tree. Yeah, I feel like he's a Kyle Hamilton-esque type player or type like physical specimen. I'm not sure his instincts will ever be Kyle Hamilton. But like, if you can get half of that, you're talking about a plus.
Oh, absolutely. So, yeah, a lot to like in this linebacker room for sure.
And then the cornerback room is scary. Not gonna like. I love Deonte Banks. I think Deonte Banks is gonna have a bounce back year from his rookie year. I really liked him coming out of the draft, but behind him, I mean, Cordell Flott.
Lot of receivers in this division.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of questions here.
Yeah.
And I loved Andrew Phillips coming out of the draft too. I think Phillips has a chance to become a starter, but like it's
luckily the
young.
quarterbacks that have to be getting the ball out pretty quick, most likely.
Like I don't even think I had Trey Herndon on that graphic, but like Trey Herndon might be starting. There's a lot of questions. Like you notice these little notes underneath. That means there's questions. Is it Cordell Flott or Nick McLeod outside? Is it Trey Herndon or Drew Phillips in the nickel? I ran this by our friend from last year, the football grump. I sent him this and asked, "Does this look right?" And he's like, "Well, maybe here, maybe." It's like there's a lot of unknowns still, and like he was very helpful in figuring out those unknowns.
He put out they've been speaking of football grump from last year. What was his name?
He just goes by the football grump.
Okay, yeah. They've been putting out some pretty good work on reviewing their Hard Knocks. I checked them out earlier. Real good work over there. So shout out to him.
So in the corner room, just a lot of questions there, but a lot of youth and some talent too. It's just like it feels like it's a year or two away. And in the safety room, still like Jason Pinnock was making some plays last year that were fairly nice. And Tyler Nubin was a guy I liked in the draft. So like they're building some nice talent on this defense, and in the secondary specifically, they're adding some talented youth, but like it's not there yet. It's not where it needs to be. But I think there's going to be flashes of it throughout this year because this D line is going to give that secondary opportunities.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of where you kind of have to hang your hat on for this team. We talked about at the beginning. I mean, you got to be able to get pressure on the quarterback, take some pressure off those DBs, and hopefully you can keep it to some low-scoring games. And if you can keep some low-scoring games, a lot of these wide receiver skill positions can really bust it open for you. So, I mean, and I think Dayball's the kind of the perfect coach for that too. It's where, I mean, they're going to want to get you in a dogfight, and if this team can get you in a dogfight, they can absolutely beat you. But yeah, I mean, it's really just Daniel Jones here, and he's one of those guys where if he gets going on his feet and he can hit his guys in open field, he can be dangerous. But I mean, I don't think anybody's really looking at this team saying like if we're looking at a 3 to 5 year window, I don't think anybody's really seeing Daniel Jones as the future of this team. So that's really the thing holding me back from really liking the Giants. I think I have them winning 2 games. So yeah, I mean,
more than that. You got them at 4.
4 games.
13.
Okay.
I've got them at 6 and 11.
Yeah, and yeah. So I mean, my biggest issue with this team compared to the Washington is I really like Cliff, and I think Jaden Daniels can absolutely elevate them to where I just don't think Daniel Jones can elevate this team to a lot of wins.
Yeah, and where we differ, I think that D line is equal, if not greater than Cliff, and I don't think Jaden Daniels elevates much. Like that's where
I guess that's where we disagree. I mean, because I'm not huge on Jaden Daniels, but I think he's going to give some teams fit, especially rookie year.
Yeah, so. I mean, he very well might, but we saw Justin Fields give teams fits and only win 3 games.
Yeah, that's very, very true.
I think there's a lot of similarities.
Yeah, I think the coaching staff's a little bit better than what the Bears had in-house during that time. But yeah, I mean, I agree with you.
Yeah. And then, on the schedule here, there's not a whole lot to really talk about. There's a Brian Burns revenge game in Week 10 international, 2 Saquon revenge games, Leonard Williams revenge game against the Seahawks. But there weren't a whole lot of storylines worth really discussing that I could find, at least.
Yeah, they're definitely going to have to. If they get to 6 wins, they're going to have to get 3 in the division. And where those 3 wins come, I don't know. But
let's see. I've got them beaten. I'm starting 2-0.
Yeah, starting out hot. Vikings, Giants. I mean,
So I didn't have them be in the Vikings until recently. With all the recent news coming out about the Vikings, I just think that team is going to be in rough shape.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I might change my mind on that one, but I'm gonna leave it at the Vikings for now. I think they got a lot of talent on that team, and man, I think they could start out hot, but we'll see.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that wraps it up for us.
All right. Well, that'll be it for this week. Let us know in the comments if you're watching who's going to win this division and why, and why the Eagles are going to go 0-17. Would love to hear your thoughts on that. And then we'll be back next week talking NFC West. Fun division. So,
yeah, let's do it. All right. Adios.
You know how I feel, but I'm not going to say a word, but I will say one thing right now. How about them Cowboys?